Good morning. I'd like to call this work session of the Daviess County Fiscal Court to order. I think today is September 3, 2025, and we're here at the Daviess County Courthouse. If you would, I'd like to start with a brief prayer and the pledge. Dear Heavenly Father, we pause and we thank you for the many blessings you bestowed upon us as a community, as individuals, and as a nation. We ask your guidance as we do the work of the citizens today. We ask you to bless our visitors that are here from out of state. We ask you to just bless all of us, those who are concerned on both sides of this issue, and just put our hearts at ease. Help us to be civil to one another, but help us to get the answers that our citizens seek. We pray these things in the name of Jesus, our Lord and Savior. Amen. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Just for those who are watching and also those who are present here in the chambers, because this is a work session, the way we work sessions is the only speakers will be those, the four of us up here that have questions. All the questions were submitted to me in advance. I did my best. Brooke and I typed them up, and we tried to categorize them, and we sent them to NextEra and also Heelstone. I believe Heelstone is not present with us today. Commissioner Marksberry chose to not submit her questions to me, so whatever she's got, she'll be asking at the end of the tail end after we go through the prepared questions. And Lester, at this point, I'm going to turn it over to you, if you don't mind. You said you had an opening comment or statement or whatever. I'll let you do that. If you would also please introduce your team. And just real quick, I know you know the ones of us up here, and we've got our names, but I'll go ahead and introduce our team up here, the fiscal court members. Commissioner Larry Condor, he's Central Commissioner. Myself, Judge Charlie Caslin. Commissioner Marksberry, she's East County Commissioner Janie Marksberry, and Commissioner Chris Caslin is West County Commissioner. And like I said, I believe you've met all of them. I'm not sure your team members have. For the team members, I would ask, just for the record, when you come, if you happen to have a speaking part, that you come to the mic, just state your name and also your position relative to the first time, not every time, relative to your company. And Lester, at this time, you've got the floor.
All right, thank you so much for having us this morning. Good morning, everyone. I am Lester Morales. I am a senior project manager for NextEra Energy Resources. We are proposing a 150 megawatt solar facility here in Daviess County, which has been brought forward to the fiscal court on multiple occasions. We were provided the questions prior to today's work session, which we appreciated it, and we're prepared to respond to that. I wanted to note, just to save us some time along the day, some of the either common topics, common concerns, whether it's from the fiscal court or the community. We noted that there are two common concerns. Of course, what impact will a solar facility being brought to the county have on its community members, the adjacent and adjoining landowners, non-participating landowners, just the community at large? And then secondly, what is the process to allowing something like this to occur at the county level? And I want to address something specific on that second point. From a permit process standpoint, we cannot do this without permission. We cannot do this without permission at the state level. We cannot do this without permission at the county level. At the state level, there is a Kentucky State Siting Board construction certificate that every solar project, every renewable project must obtained prior to mobilization. In that construction certificate, they cover a lot of the topics that are being asked in this questionnaire. Economic impact reports. You have economic questions in general, surveys, reports that we as a company would invest in third-party engineers, third-party experts, professionals that will analyze the particulars of the site that we're proposing and would be able to provide more accurate numbers. So if I respond in a way that is expecting these surveys to come out, I'm not being dismissive. I am telling you that the application process will make this information public. The second point is the conditional use permit at the county level. Your planning and zoning passed these, the Article 8.4.59 amendments. I printed them out here for myself, for my reference. A lot of the questions in here are whether we would be willing to do something, or NextEra would be in position to do something in terms of the project. That is up to the municipality, the local municipality. The planning and zoning department dictates the requirements that we would follow and we would comply with. This is no different than the Kentucky State Siding Board releasing mitigation conditions, where we would look at the conditions, the requirements, and make sure that every aspect of our project is compliant with those conditions. So if I respond in a way that is yielding to the local municipality's requirements and regulations, again, I'm not being dismissive. I am explaining how we would approach our development of this project. And then now I would go to my team here, starting with Jason Andrews. I think they want you to go to the mic and.
No, not right now.
Okay, we have Jason Andrews. He's our director. We have Sarah Johnson, who is our marketing and communications expert, and our environmental specialist, Brian Bartles. We have Mike from our Atlanta team. He deals with, he's our boots on the ground guy. Who else do we have here? Meredith. Oh, there she goes. She's our external legal counsel here locally in Kentucky. So I think I'm not missing anyone, am I? No.
Jason's far left.
Meredith is right next. I didn't see her, sorry. Brian. Mike is sitting right behind Brian. So at any point, if a question gets pretty much a little too technical, I will lean on some of my subject matter experts for that expertise.
I believe you, microphone. Sorry about that. So I believe you have the same list of questions that I gave you a copy of what I'm going to be reading from, and just for their citizens, I'm going to just read them, and then you can respond. All of these questions pertain to the current holding company. For example, NextEra, which owns Owensboro Solar LLC. How many utility-scale solar farms has the holding company developed to date?
So each project is its own investment for in our portfolio. Just to give you a glimpse, NextEra Energy Resources is one of America's largest energy infrastructure developers. We have decades of records going, way back to the beginning of this run that we've had with renewable energy. Our portfolio is expansive. For us to collect all of that data is something we don't have today. But what I will share is that We have solar facilities, distributed generation, solar thermal facilities, where our net generating capacity is over 10,000 megawatts. And we also have ownership interest in solar facilities where the net generating capacity is over 7,800 megawatts in 31 different states as of 2020, the end of 2024. The data, particularly on the amount of sites or the utility scale solar sites with our holding company, that's how I would respond to that.
Okay. Of those installations, how many are still owned by the same holding company?
We own and operate all of our sites.
Please provide a detailed breakdown of the size of all utility-scale solar installations completed by the holding company, including both the total project size in megawatts and the acreage occupied by the solar panels.
So Owensboro Solar, as we proposed it, is very new in its development phase. We were in the process of requesting the permits prior to this moratorium taking place. So we would want to apply to be able to get some of this information. But I would answer that the same way I answered the previous question. We own and operate projects in 31 states as of last year.
Okay. How many utility-scale solar farms has the holding company decommissioned? If any, please provide the average total cost per acre for decommissioning, as well as a subset amount for the average labor cost per acre. If you have never decommissioned a utility-scale solar farm, how are you coming up with the cost data to the Transmission Sites Board in our county for bonding?
So we are going to follow all state and local requirements when it comes to the decommissioning topic. We have not yet decommissioned any of our sites, but we have repowered some of our sites across the nation where the local municipality has allowed us to do that.
I didn't catch what you said, but you haven't decommissioned any,
No.
but you have
Repowered. So,
repowered.
So our deals are, say, 20, 30 years, right? And at the end of those 20, 30 years, we've been allowed to extend an additional time.
Okay, instead of decommissioning, you've been, okay. What percentage of the solar panels the holding company has installed to date were manufactured domestically and are owned by a domestic company?
So we source our materials from a variety of companies and countries based on cost availability and what is right for the project. We work with reputable vendors capable of delivering the quality and just at the scale that we needed to be to make these projects occur. For additional projects throughout the Commonwealth, we have sourced materials from in-state, Nucor plants, among others, and we'll plan to follow this practice when available for this project.
Okay. How many of your utility-scale solar farms also have a battery energy storage system? Do you plan on installing one for this project in Daviess County, Kentucky, either during initial construction or after the fact?
So batteries are included in our NextEra Energy Resource portfolio. With the Kentucky State Siting Board, we have one approved battery facility here in Kentucky. So we would love for that to be an option here in Owensboro. Yeah, that's how I would answer that.
Do you use non-disclosure agreements in your leases? If yes,
Can you repeat the question?
yes, sir. Do you use non-disclosure agreements in your leases? If yes, then our question is, if industrial solar projects are truly beneficial to our county and do not negatively impact property values, then why are non-disclosure agreements used?
Our agreements with the landowners are voluntary agreements. We do not have them sign NDAs. Next, I can't speak for what other companies are doing, but NextEra Energy Resources does not require NDAs from our landowners.
So you don't require non-disclosure agreements?
No.
Okay.
Did you say you did not have them sign a lease?
No, I said we did not have them sign non-disclosure agreements.
Okay, thank you.
How many times has the holding company received a claim against any bond related to a solar installation? Please notice we're looking for claims against the bond, not whether it was paid out.
Not in a position to comment on any litigation. I'm not aware of that.
Are you saying there aren't any, or I understand you can't speak specifically to a lawsuit that might exist, but are you saying there aren't any?
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying I'm not commenting on any litigation at this time.
Okay.
I'm not in position to do that.
Okay. Property values and setbacks. This says demand for positive evidence. Is there a 1,000-foot setback sufficient to adequately mitigate the negative impact on adjoining home values? And this has some commentary. I'm going to go ahead and read it, but that's the question. We have consistently been told that there is no evidence showing that large-scale solar farms do not affect property values. In light of this, we formally request a lower evidentiary threshold, eliminating the need for an official study for this question. Specifically, we request a direct comparison of individual home sale prices before and after the installation of a solar facility, adjusted only for inflation, not compared to surrounding property values. And then they've got, to be clear, we request the sale price of each home prior to a solar farm lease signing, followed by the sale price of the same home after installation. We further request that this data be provided in a clear Excel spreadsheet format. A formal report is not necessary. The burden of proof should rest with the applicant to demonstrate that the proposed project will not materially diminish adjoining property values. And then they've got, here are other requirements for the data. All homes must be in rural agricultural zone and considered an adjoining property. Please include the full address of the home, setback distance, and description of vegetative barrier. Please include the month and year of the solar lease signing and the month and year of the finished installation. Please include the home sale prices, pre-solar lease signing, post-solar installation, pre-solar home sale dollar value accounting for inflation for the post-solar installation month and year of sale. Please use the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics at the calculator of inflation, and they've got a link. And I'm going to stop there. So the basic question is a 1,000-foot setback sufficient to adequately mitigate the negative impact on adjoining home values?
I'm going to get to some of the itemized items here on the asks, the sales price and all of that. I want to also highlight that what is currently in your solar ordinance is exactly what will work for the site. We sat down, we talked about these, we explained the limits and the parameters of what would work for our site when the planning and zoning accepted the solar ordinance changes and amendments. If something occurs beyond that, then you're essentially communicating that the contrary. In terms of the other questions that you have on here, we dove deep into this question. We reviewed, we researched studies across the nation to understand what is the industry doing, what analyses are out there. And we found peer review studies that have shown that solar projects do not adversely impact neighboring properties. A 2024 Science Direct study on property value impacts investigated 70 utility-scale solar facilities in the U.S. Midwest built between 2009 and 2022 and found utility-scale solar projects, this is post-construction, can increase nearby property values by approximately 0.5 to 2%. This is one peer review studies, and we have a few. I'll just read a couple of them. A 2021 study by Cohn Resnick, a Chicago-based firm that specializes in property valuations, looked at home sales in proximity to 6 solar farms in Indiana, Illinois, Minnesota, and Michigan. It found no negative impacts on property values adjacent to solar farms. From a peer review standpoint, that's what's out there. But it boils down to what we're trying to do here in the county. The Owensboro Solar Project will comply with all local and state requirements regarding setbacks. If there is 1,000-foot setbacks, we would look at what that does to our buildable footprint and make a business decision at that point. As specified by the KRS 278.704, Kentucky law requires a site assessment report that provides an analysis of the proposed solar site's projected effect on the electricity transmission system in Kentucky, as well as an analysis of the proposed economic impact on the affected region. So again, this boils down to the application package that we submit both at the state and local levels. Whatever those requirements are, whatever the setback requirements are, we would simply comply with those requirements.
Okay. Commissioner Condor.
Thank you, Judge. Just to clarify, earlier in your statements, Lester, I believe you were talking about what is on the books currently with OMPC as far as setbacks are concerned. And as everyone is aware, there was a moratorium placed on, especially concerning the setbacks and moving everything back 1,000 feet, which is referenced here. So in your reference, are you talking about the 1,000 feet, or are you talking about what it was prior to that, which I believe was 350, maybe 250 feet? I don't remember exactly what
They
that
were
might have been.
different. They were different.
They were different?
Depending on what was next to them, whether it was residence,
Got it.
whether it was a school, whether it was
So
a road.
To answer your question, your section 59 C in your ordinance, and this was as of yesterday. Setback requirements for a level 3 SES shall be as followed: 75 feet from the perimeter property lines, 150 feet from any residential structures, 450 feet. Inverters shall be located at least 450 feet from any residential structure, and all equipment shall be located at least 500 feet from any county parks.
And then the moratorium happened, which moved everything, regardless of classification, is that correct? Back to 1,000 feet. And so your earlier reference was about what it was prior to that, as discussed and agreed upon, then the change happens, correct? Is that what you're referring to earlier in your statement?
Correct. The date that I referenced was the January this year date, when the planning and zoning accepted the amendments we worked on with the judge.
Thank you. And as far as answering the question that has been submitted by the judge right here, the 1,000 feet, have you done an in-depth analysis for any project, whether it's local or not? Does that work? Does that make anything worthwhile in the community when your setbacks are that far out?
Not with the land that we have available. It will not work.
Okay, thank you, Judge.
So the next item on the list, the next item on the list, can you provide and these are really related to what you just answered, but can you provide a paired sales analysis and a hedonic regression analysis evaluating how properties adjacent to large-scale solar projects are affected in terms of value? Please provide only studies that are applicable to the size and scale of the agricultural zone in the solar farm you plan to install in Daviess County, Kentucky. And then item C, will you compensate adjacent landowners if property values drop?
I would answer it the same way. We would follow all the state and local requirements. In terms of, any other questions
Okay.
on that part? It's pretty much the same question, asked differently, in my opinion, unless you think otherwise.
Okay. She tapped my arm and I lost
No,
my train of
it's
thought.
okay.
So,
Sorry, I caught that. I was just saying, to me, it's pretty much the same concern, just asked differently. Unless you
Yes.
think otherwise, I can answer something different.
okay, thank you. Let me ask you the lengthy part that I read as part before you answered the last question was asking for a lot of detail. I'm assuming you're not going to provide that.
What detail?
You referenced a couple studies,
Yeah.
but they specifically said, we request a sale price of each home prior to solar. So the bottom line is the questioner is asking for a lot of detail.
Yeah.
I'm taking from your verbal answer that you're not prepared to give an Excel spreadsheet with a lot of answers.
Yeah, that's just not something that we track. If we have projects in 31 different states, 10,000 megawatts, this is a 150 megawatt project. These are isolated investments that we make. We don't set up our data management in a way that we could simply turn that over. So that would require, it would be laborsome to do, to collect that data and provide it. So that's something we're not prepared to
Fair
even
enough.
discuss today.
Fair enough. Commissioner Marksberry, you indicated you had a question.
Thank you, Judge. Yes, you asked most of what I was going to ask, Judge. But, so you referenced a peer review study, and you have had these questions for, I don't know, weeks, if not months. Why was that study not provided to us as part of your answer?
We were told today was the day for the Q&A, so we're prepared to answer the questions that were given to us today.
Can you provide that to us today via email? Can someone go ahead and send that, please? Do you all have our emails?
Absolutely.
Okay, great. I'd like to have that while we're in session, if possible. Okay, thank you.
And Judge, I had a follow-up.
Commissioner Casson, go ahead.
So I noticed that Brian Howard with Planning and Zoning is here, and I wasn't sure if we had a clear view of what the question was or the answer was in the Planning and Zoning question earlier, and just wanted to see if we could, if we need any clarification from him, if that would be possible. If you could.
I don't think we need any clarification, but just for the record, Lester, he specifically referenced the action and the numbers and the setbacks that were included that the Planning and Zoning Commission addressed in January. I think it was January 9th was that meeting date of 2025. And then subsequently, the fiscal court addressed that topic, and we made an amendment to all those setbacks of 1,000 feet from any point that's not part of their project.
Correct. For clarification purposes, what you read, that item C, that is the city of Owensboro and city of Whitesville. The paragraph below that is unincorporated Daviess County, which you all did add that 1,000-foot buffer, and that is part of the zoning ordinance. So
Okay, and-
just for clarification purposes.
And Brian, if you would, just state your name and,
Brian Howard, Planning and Zoning Office.
all right, thank you. Is that good enough, Commissioner? Okay. Commissioner Condor.
So bottom line, if the setback is not changed from 1,000 feet, the solar farms don't happen in Daviess County, correct?
That's correct.
Thank you, Judge.
Thank you, Commissioner. This item, this question 3 addresses jobs for Daviess County, Kentucky. There's a request for employment and workforce data. It says, please use data from your holding company's experience of all previous solar installations completed and provide a subset of data specific to projects in Kentucky. What percentage of individuals hired during the construction phase were local workers, with local being defined as residing in a rental or owned home within a 20-mile radius of the project site prior to the issuance of the solar project's conditional use permit?
Hello? Okay. During the construction phase, we hire an EPC, which is an engineer and procurement and construction contractor. When we award that contractor, they're responsible for the hiring as many qualified workers necessary to construct the facility. We at NextEra Energy Resources make it known that it is the local municipality's preference that local employees are considered, and we encourage that at the time of award.
Okay. What percentage of individuals hired after the construction phase are sourced from local talent versus those brought in from out of state? Same definition as the prior question. So what I'm hearing you say is you're not giving any specific numbers you're not really addressing the specific question that was asked, because they're asking what percentage of individuals. You're saying you use an NPC to do the hiring, and you do let them know that the local government prefers the local talent be used.
Correct.
But you're not prepared to give us specific percentages on, say, any of the jobs that you all have going. I believe you have construction going on in either Meade and Breckinridge County, and maybe even Henderson County.
Each project is different. We would have to now analyze that for Owensboro Solar. And that would be my response, is when we're prepared to construct, we would have to, we still have a lot of surveys, a lot of reports to do. We don't know the extent of the work that needs to occur on the site. So we just, we would hire the EPC, we would evaluate everything that's necessary to start construction, and they would determine the workforce.
Okay. I understand that, but I also know, and to Commissioner Marksberry's earlier point, you've had this information for some time, these questions.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to smack you around, but I am disappointed because while I'll give you that the data that was, what's the right term to use, on all the home sales, that would be maybe pretty complicated to gather and put together, especially given the number of sites you all have. But my first thought is, if I were given these questions myself, I think to the point I just made, I know you have, or I believe you have, 2 other projects ongoing right now in next door, County Henderson, and also just 1 county over in Breckinridge, and Meade's adjacent to that. And that's a joint multi-county lines project. But it seems like this particular data would have been pretty easy for y'all to gather. I'll just say I'm disappointed that you don't have that, and maybe suggest that you ask your MPC to provide that. It's something I would think they would probably find pretty easy to put together. This next question is right alongside that. What percentage of all workers hired for the solar installation were union members? Do you have that information?
No, this is information that we allow the EPC to hire the workforce. That's how I would answer that question today. In terms of the OMPC requirements, there was no mention of that being a requirement in the local level. There's no requirement at the Kentucky State Siding Board construction certificate level that requires this information to be shared. So we haven't collected that information for our other 4 projects that are in the state and have been approved by the Kentucky State Siding Board as well.
Okay. I'm going to go ahead and read the rest, even though I think you're going to give the same, similar answers. Will you publicly disclose how much of the project budget will be allocated to local wages versus out-of-state labor costs?
We will abide by all local and state conditions, including making publicly available any information that is required.
Okay. If you are committed to supporting the local community, how do you plan to partner with local workforce development programs or high schools to create training pipelines or apprenticeships?
We will comply with all of the local and state requirements, including making publicly available any information that is required.
Okay. And then the last one on this one, in order to deliver real community value, will you agree to enter into a community benefits agreement that includes specific commitments to hiring local hiring targets, job training programs, and fair wage standards?
We will comply with all local and state requirements.
Okay, so given what you just said to the last question I just read,
Yes, sir.
would it be safe to say that since the state siding board, if we push them to, could include that as a requirement? That you do local hiring, that a certain percentage threshold be met?
What, I'm sorry, I'm not catching the question.
I'm saying, you said that you would do, if I understood your answer correctly, you said that you would be willing to do whatever the state siding board and the local municipality required.
Correct.
So my question to you is, if we put that in place, will you be prepared to hire local? Will you be prepared to, if we ask you to hire union? Because I know Commissioner Casson and myself have been approached by some union representatives saying that if this project comes in, they certainly want to be a party to providing the labor. And they had statistics on other states where they've done that. But if I'm not mistaken, those other states might even require it. I don't remember specifically.
I don't know if they were by state judge or if it was by the local municipality.
Gotcha. Is it a safe assumption that if we put that in there, that y'all would comply with local hiring targets?
If it's in the solar ordinance, that has to be part of our consideration for these projects. We will comply with the requirements.
Okay. Commissioner Marksberry?
Thank you, Judge. What percentage of this construction cost is labor only?
That is information we would go into when we award the EPC. So I need us to be on the same page on where this project is in its current infancy. We are very early in the development process of even getting to construction. We're at least 2-3 years from putting boots on the ground, hiring this EPC that would collect that data that we're asking for today. We're 2 years away from obtaining the permits that we need, both from the state and local, but also we need a general transmission agreement with the MISO Zone 6. There's so many agreements that need to go, that we need to obtain, local permits, state permits. We also need to spend capital at our level. So if we don't have the setbacks, if we don't have the foundation to construct this type of project, why would we invest the money necessary for obtaining these permits if at its basic level, at the setback level, we we don't have a project. So today, the reason why I'm answering that question is so that I can push the fiscal court to develop a ordinance that is either feasible for a project like this to continue or not.
If I may finish, Judge, that was just part of my question.
Go ahead.
So you all have done several projects, so I'm sure you have some labor costs
Correct.
per acre
Correct.
from these projects. Are you able to share that? And also, in 30 years, what are we going to be looking at? In other words,
Correct.
how much do you estimate it will cost to take it down, the decommissioning costs?
Yes. The decommissioning bonds, the decommissioning plans for these other projects are made available by the Kentucky State Siting Board, and the case files are on their website.
Okay. But again, back to my question, what percentage of this construction cost is labor per acre? Because you have done projects in Kentucky.
Correct.
Can you get me that?
For Owensboro, I don't have
Well,
that
and
data.
I'm sure Henderson's close. I'm sure, you know, the cost would be similar. Did you have anything?
I was prepared to talk about Owensboro, and I would love.
Okay, isn't this very job specific, putting up solar farms? So most likely no local jobs will be during this construction process. Is that a fair statement?
No, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
The next batch of questions on this, on this list is environmental/wildlife. What specific type of solar panel is proposed for the Daviess County project? For example, and I might not get this right, it looks like monocrystalline, polycrystalline, thin film, or transparent.
The current plan for this project is to include a monocrystalline panels, but this can change if a different material is deemed more appropriate at the time we bring on the EPC.
What percentage of solar panels used in all previous installations by your holding company were recyclable? Solar panel is considered recyclable if its components can be separated, processed, and reused, or if the entire panel can be repurposed.
To the extent possible, project equipment will be reconditioned, resourced, or recycled to the extent possible. The Department of Energy's Solar Energy Technologies Office states that 95% of the materials in the solar panel can be recycled. NextEra Energy will continue to make significant strides in this recycling effort.
Okay. Do you plan to use recyclable materials for this project? If so, where do you plan to recycle the glass and plastics, given the lack of local access to glass recycling and the limited access to plastic recycling?
NextEra Energy Resources has a robust waste vendor auditing process to ensure that all the waste is managed appropriately. As part of this initiative, we also require vendors to provide recycling certificates to provide further assurance that all applicable regulations are followed.
If the panels you plan to use, such as thin film, contain hazardous materials, how do you plan to prevent those materials from entering waterways during a hailstorm, tornado, or other severe weather event?
Yeah, and this is a fair question. In Hopkins County, they experienced 2 tornadoes that ripped through the same area 2 years in a row. You've had floods in the last week. You've had so many weather storms and events in recent history. So I understand this question. People have safely been living and working around solar panels for decades. Research has shown that these solar panels do not pose a material risk or toxicity to the public health and safety, which include no material risk of chemical components leaching into soil and groundwater. Solar cells are encapsulated between 2 layers of plastic with a layer of tempered glass and a polymer sheet or industrial lamination. In the same way a windshield cracks but stays intact, a damaged solar panel would, have a similar reaction.
Okay. What hail impact related solar panel is proposed for use in this project?
I'm sorry, ask the question.
What hail impact rated solar panel is proposed for use in this project?
Photovoltaic panel manufacturers test and rate their equipment to withstand impacts from hailstones. Any panels used as part of the Owensboro Solar Project will comply with the appropriate safety requirements to mitigate adverse effects to the site and adjacent properties.
So when you say they are, I'm going to say hail tested, I'm just making up that phrase.
Yeah. These,
To
they're
what,
outside.
to what, when they're tested, are they for a dime or quarter size, or this cap size, or are they softball size? I mean, what?
I don't know. Maybe I don't know if any of my team has the answer to that, but we are confident that the manufacturers are doing the safety tests, and our engineering experts could probably comment on that. If that's a post workshop question, we can answer that.
Okay.
Is that something we could do today? Maybe I'll jot down the list, maybe a list of questions that you guys want us to follow up on. We can, we've done that for the other siting board permits where we go after a session, we can provide additional content based on questions.
Absolutely, I would be open to that. Will you have insurance that covers full environmental liability due to solar farm and construction? Will this be in place on day one?
Yeah, this is a requirement by Kentucky law to have these various insurances prior to the start of construction.
Has an independent third-party ecological impact study been conducted specifically addressing local species, migratory patterns, and wildlife corridors? Will you commit to maintaining natural habitat buffers? Has a full independent environmental impact study been completed?
Yes, sorry, I was, yeah, as part of our development process, NextEra Energy conducts these environmental studies as part of our application processes. There are multiple environmental permits that that require these studies. So yes, we would conduct those. Those will be made available publicly as well.
We have reviewed complaints about solar companies failing to be good neighbors. And it gives, here's an example, and it's got a link to an article. Fine dirt and sand was used under the panels, resulting in neighboring homes experiencing increased dust and dirt infiltration. Neighbor requests for remediation were ignored. What do you plan on doing with the area under the panels?
There will be seeded with the proper species to help mitigate erosion and dust.
How will you prevent erosion and control dust and dirt migration?
In addition to the seeding below the panels, we'll follow the industry best practices to limit any impacts from the site preparation. In the rare instance that site and weather conditions result in dust impacts, we work closely with our neighbors to mitigate those effects.
Are you willing to establish a cash bond with the county to address complaints related to these types of issues?
We will comply with all state and local requirements.
Would you be willing to contribute annually a certain percentage to a community mitigation fund that will be managed by a local board? This ensures that money is in the hands of those most affected by traffic, noise, visual impact, etc.
The Owensboro solar project will comply with all state and local requirements.
Water. What percentage of all previously installed solar panels were located within a special flood hazard area as defined by FEMA?
The Owensboro Solar Project complies with all local and state floodplain requirements as well.
What percentage were within 3 miles of a major river, such as the Ohio River or the Green River, that has experienced flash flooding?
Currently, we have no projects that are within this distance of a major river.
For those installations located in a flood-prone areas, what engineered solutions were implemented to manage stormwater runoff and flash flooding? Please specify whether these measures were applied during or after construction.
The measures are part of the design structure. So when the EPC is doing their design milestones, we have a civil package that we review thoroughly with them, and they consider in the civil package what the grade the land has to be in order to make these projects feasible. Depending on these needs or requirements, these measures can remain in effect throughout the life of the project for only the duration of construction. So sometimes the civil packages are, let me retract. The civil package that is developed by the EPC will include these concerns.
You may. Mr. Marksberry.
What is a civil package?
Yes. So part of the design package that the EPC again stands for the engineering, procurement, and construction contractor. This third-party engineering company creates different packages for our project. It's a very big project, very complex, and so they divide it into 3 phases: the mechanical, the civil, and there's one more. But in the civil package, you're looking at its ground level. What does the ground need to look like? What are the slopes? Are there any streams or anything that's on the ground level? What do we need to do to the ground in order for the panels to sit the way we want them to? That's the civil package.
Has that work been done for this project?
No.
Could you share that from a different project that's been done recently? So we would see what that looks like. Would that be possible?
I'm not sure. Is that something we do?
I'm sorry. Just to understand what a civil package would look like, is there a way you all could share one that you've done with a neighboring county?
If that, we can add that to the post-hearing questions, and
Okay, that'd be great. Thank you.
we'll answer the best we can. Yep. Thank you.
Will you post a bond to guarantee that flood-related impacts will not be transferred to adjacent properties?
Again, we'll follow the requirements. This includes obtaining, so when it comes to this flooding topic, yes, we follow all the state and local requirements to ensure that we have minimal disruption to the current drainage and the water flow patterns in the area. This includes the KPDES permit. As part of that, there's a component in there called the SWIP, the SWPPP, which is the stormwater pollution. It always trips me up. There's too many P's. Pollution prevention plan. Thank you, Brian. As part of that, they are mandated for construction activities that disturb 1 or more acres of land, which is applicable in this case. NextEra Energy will also abide by the conditions established as part of the permit that the Daviess County Planning and Zoning Department would approve.
Will the project undergo independent hydraulic reviews? Can you provide documentation of those reviews?
Yes, we will conduct all the necessary hydrology reports, and we will share the relevant findings. As mentioned, we will follow all of the CUP requirements.
Regarding roads, how will you cover the full cost of restoring roads impacted by construction traffic to their pre-construction condition or better, including repaving, not just patching?
Yeah, so we would enter into a road use agreement closer to the start of construction for this project with your road department. We would collaborate with your road department, understand those requirements, and then come to a consensus on that agreement, that executed agreement with your road department.
Would that be done, you said closer to the project, so would that be done as part of the approval process, or would that be done just before you started construction?
The latter.
Okay.
Prior to start of construction, we will consult with your road department, we'll consult with your OMPC, building. There's so many layers to this. So when we sit down with your OMPC, we discuss building and electrical inspections, fees, permits. These ministerial permits happen right before the commencement of construction. In parallel to that, we have this road use agreement that we would consult with the road department on, and any other. So there are mitigation conditions that require us to consult with certain agencies at the state level, and we would do that. Road departments, some areas have conservation districts. They have so many. Every project is different. For this project and your road use agreement perspective, that's all a part of those ministerial things that we would do prior to start construction.
Okay. Commissioner Marksberry.
Thank you, Judge. Are you willing to put money up for the roads when decommissioned, separate from the decommission cost?
Yeah, it is a separate agreement, and if that's a requirement, we would comply with that.
Will you commit to a third-party road condition assessment before and after construction to funding full repairs and replacements as needed based on those assessments?
We would follow all the local requirements.
These are questions regarding fire. According to Silicon Ranch's frequently asked questions page, international data suggests a large solar system fire risk is less than 1%, specifically 0.07%. Based on averages from Germany, Italy, the UK, and Japan, the United States average is unknown, as solar farm fires are not currently tracked as a separate category. Using those numbers, in 2023, the United States recorded 1,389,000 fires. Applying 0.07% to that figure results in approximately 972 fires that could have been attributed to large solar systems. In 2023, there were approximately 4,185 solar farms in the United States. Based on this hypothetical calculation, approximately 23% of solar farm sites could potentially experience a fire event. In light of this data, how many of the solar installations installed in the past had a fire suppression and response system installed? If you have had some, then the following applies. Were the local fire departments trained and equipped to handle solar and battery fires? Excuse me. Did you pay for additional training for fire response?
Thank you. In terms of the data that's provided, I cannot speak on the safety protocols and equipment that other companies or other projects are used. Those things are proprietary or that's their project, their investment. I can only speak about what we intend to do here in Owensboro. Our equipment, our protocols, our safety protocols are consider these risks. We have a safety protocol that gauges the temperature, monitors and tracks the performance of our facilities, and monitors them remotely. So when it comes to our technologies, what we invest in, what we install and operate versus what other competitors or the companies, other projects do, there's a distinction there. So if we're focused on something specifically for what we intend to do, I'll be happy to answer that.
What are the fire protocol for these farms proposed in Daviess County, Kentucky?
What are the fire protocols?
Yes.
So let me find my footing here. I think I lost my placement.
It's item 8B.
You're in the fire section,
Yes.
fire concerns. Perfect. What is the fire protocol for these site proposed in Daviess County? Is that your
Yes.
question?
Yes.
There is a low likelihood of a fire at a solar facility like this. Our comprehensive safety systems protect the community through multiple layers, as I was explaining earlier, protection. The solar site itself poses minimal fire risk since the panels are mostly made of metal and glass, which do not easily ignite. The inverter units and pad mount transformers, which are a potential source of fire, typically contain vegetable oil or mineral oils, which are not hazardous materials. In the event of a piece of equipment to catch fire, the lack of fuel that the solar site is comprised of is expected to prevent expected to prevent the fire from spreading beyond its the solar or the fenced-in area. Does that make sense? Sorry, I was.
I think I follow.
So what, in simpler terms, what I'm saying is that what the solar site, solar facility is comprised of, the materials that it's made of and what's inside of those solar panels, it's not fuel for a fire to burst and spread and cause any major damage outside of its facility. The likelihood of that even happening is very low.
I'm assuming that the questioner is asking more specifically, let's say, I mean, we're in a pretty dry period right now.
Yeah.
And so if your grass, let's say, hadn't been mowed for a spell, and I mean, I know we've had fields of corn catch on fire before harvest time and burn up. And that would be a possibility. I think that's the real focus. Is not that your pipes and your panels are necessarily explosive like candy gas would be.
Yeah.
But rather
The safety protocol is what you're targeting.
Yes, sir.
What is the safety protocol? So prior to start of construction, we initiate and execute an emergency action plan. We consult with the fire department in that in development of that document. So that the first responders know how to mitigate whatever risk is on the solar site. We also have smart monitoring systems for continuous monitoring. We monitor the voltage, we monitor the temperature, the performance of the facility, and we have the capability of remotely shutting down facilities as well if it's deemed necessary. So our safety protocols are just that: continuous monitoring, consulting with the local officials and training and creating a comprehensive training, sitting down with the first responders, emergency services, to make sure that if there was a dire event or something necessary for their response, that they know how to do so safely. That's part of it.
Mr. Marksberry, did you have
You answered, or you asked my question. Thank you about the drought and dry grass.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Are there workers present on site who are trained to respond to and extinguish fires?
Can you point me to that?
It's item C.
Item C. So we will have full-time employees on at the site, prepared to respond.
Are they trained to respond to and extinguish fires?
They would work with local officials on how to respond. Yeah.
Okay. The next question they have is how are fires extinguished?
That would be part of the emergency action plan that they work on. It depends on the technology, really.
Okay. Lithium-related fires require foam solution rather than water. Will there be sufficient resources available to extinguish fires across 1,000 acres of panels, especially when access may be limited to multiple roads?
Yeah, so we design our projects to ensure that all the necessary safety measures are met, and we work, like we mentioned, we work with local authorities on these plans. The Owensboro project is equipped with the necessary emergency response resources to reduce any adverse effects.
In California, residents near solar farm fires have been ordered to shelter in place. Is sheltering in place safe as a resident is surrounded on 3 sides by a solar farm?
Yeah, so we will work with Daviess County, local responders, OMPC, all of the requirements that are necessary. We work with the emergency response organizations to ensure that we're compliant with any guidance that are Kentucky related, provided there's an emergency incident. As I mentioned, I'm not aware of the California.
Okay. What is the likelihood that a fire at the facility could start a larger wildfire?
The site itself poses minimal fire risk since the panels are mostly made of the metal and glass we talked about, which don't easily ignite. The inverters, the pad mount transformers that could be considered that potential source of fire. Like we mentioned, it contains vegetable oil or mineral oils, which don't, and it goes to the first part of my response on the prior question of the makeup of our solar facility not being conducive to a spread of fire.
Commissioner Marksberry.
So I use vegetable oil to fry food.
Mm-hmm.
So how would that relate? I mean, doesn't that sort of
Yeah,
fuel the fire?
what we're saying is that there won't be
Keep it hot.
there won't be like when you pour vegetable oil on the soil and you try to ignite it, it's not going to create this burst of fire that spreads. That's the point we're making, is that the materials, what makes up the panels isn't conducive for a spread of that fire if it was the case.
Okay, thank you.
For your proposed project area, which fire departments would respond in the event of a fire?
Yeah, so when we get to that point, the responding agency would be the same as currently established as the most appropriate and efficient personnel for the immediate response. We're committed to working with and training the local fire departments where the project is located, and we will continue this practice in Daviess County. When we consult with the fire department and the county, we would make that determination in our emergency action plan.
Would an incident at the site be treated as an automatic multi-alarm fire?
We will comply with the protocols that the responding fire agency has deemed most appropriate.
Does the local volunteer fire department have the resources, equipment, and training necessary to respond to an industrial scale electrical fire?
I think the next two questions, which can be compiled, when we consult with the fire department, we sit down with them, we look at what's necessary, what the protocols are, what the procedures are for first responders. We will locate the fire department that would, be deemed the appropriate one, and we would train them on how to respond. We would simply follow our plan and any requirements set forward by the CUP.
So you said you addressed that but I'm gonna go ahead for the sake of the public. The question that you included in that answer, if the incident is not designated as a multi-alarm fire, which fire department would be responsible for responding? And I'm gonna just say for the viewing public, that I think the answer is that whatever station would respond today would be the same one that would respond if you were there. So, and obviously the size of the fire would determine how many additional stations were called in. What does your proposed site cross? Does your proposed site cross multiple fire department jurisdictions? You have a clue on that answer?
Yeah.
Okay.
That would be that when we consult with the fire department, we will pick the department that can respond.
But when you all do a development, are these types of questions addressed in your plans? Okay.
Absolutely.
Have you been required to install fire hydrants at any other solar farms to support fire suppression efforts for adjoining properties affected by a fire? If yes, how many have you installed?
If the Owensboro Planning Commission makes that a requirement, we will comply with all of the requirements the CUP has.
Vegetative buffering. In your Daviess County lease agreements, who is responsible for constructing and maintaining vegetative buffers or screening between the solar array and public right-of-ways?
The Owensboro Solar Project.
Are you willing to post a maintenance bond to guarantee ongoing maintenance of these buffers and address any related issues around the solar farm installation?
This is part of the siting board as well. We are required by Kentucky state law to maintain the facility and the corresponding property, which is the veg buffer area, which includes the vegetation buffer.
Are you willing to adjust the time frame of installing the buffers to when the fence goes in to give time for the buffer to establish itself?
I think this one, in line with the Kentucky State Siting Board, the established timeline for this element of the solar project will allow the buffer trees to develop, but yes.
Because I know when I drove over to Henderson and saw their project over there near Roberts, I think is the name of the town, many of the trees that it looked like had been planted as I guess, buffering trees. You know, the solar panels are as high as that table where you're sitting, and yet the trees might have been more than ankle, but probably about knee high at the most.
Yeah.
They certainly weren't waist high. And so I would argue they didn't they weren't providing the buffer that they, at least on paper, they're probably meant to provide. Real Farms, has an agricultural impact assessment been done on the impact of farms?
We have completed the appropriate assessments for the project as required by the local and state law to date, I would say. And we would continue to do that when the applications, when we're able and it's feasible to apply for these permits as part of the applications, these assessments would be made available.
How many local farm jobs and agricultural-based businesses could negatively be impacted by this project? Please provide supporting data, documentation, and/or independent economic impact analysis to substantiate your response.
Yeah, so again, the jobs conversation is when we're prepared to construct post-operation, but the solar energy development offers a unique opportunity for farmers and the communities, enhancing the agricultural land while delivering substantial economic benefits. Unlike traditional energy infrastructure that can permanently change land use, solar projects preserve the farming potential by allowing the land to rest and regenerate during the project's 20 or 30-year life cycle. This also provides the landowners some guaranteed income during that time period. This approach enables the soil restoration, diversifies revenue streams, maintains long-term agricultural productivity that continues well beyond the solar project's completion.
What impact will this project have on future generations' ability to farm or access affordable farmland in this area?
I think that's part of the same. I would respond the same way.
What you just said?
Yes.
Yeah. Have you ever decommissioned a solar farm and successfully restored the land to fertile farmland? If so, what crops were grown and what were the yields during the first 5 years after restoration? Please provide third-party soil testing data and independent verification to support your response.
We have yet to decommission any site to date.
Was any effort made to prioritize non-agricultural or marginal land for this development instead of productive farmland? If no effort, then what would stop you from doing it?
I'm going to read this one off. Was any effort made to prioritize?
Yes.
In many
agree.
geographic regions, NextEra Energy has cited projects on flat land, which serves an ideal location for the development of a solar project. When the farmland cannot be used for crop production during the life of the project, solar projects still help preserve the land, which may enhance its value for landowner and local tax purposes and its potential productivity for future farming.
How does this project align with your company's stated sustainability or ESG commitments if you are replacing food and crop producing land with solar panels?
When the agriculture activities are suspended through the life of the project, the project still preserves the soil, allowing it to remain fallow. So during the operational life of the solar project, it's typically 20, 30 years, the land will be given a rest from fertilizer application. Solar projects can typically be designed to minimize the amount of grading that's required which serves to minimize disruption to valuable topsoil resources. Where grading is needed, care is taken to preserve the topsoil.
Commissioner Marksberry.
Thank you, Judge. Back on D, when we asked, have you ever decommissioned a solar farm and successfully restored the land to fertile farmland? Your company has not done that. There are companies that have done it. There are studies that it is taking years, if not decades, to restore the land to fertile farmland. I'm sure you're aware of those studies.
I am not.
What is your projection for this farmland 20, 30 years from now?
What is my projection? My projection is that we would, NextEra, I can't speak for other organizations, but NextEra Energy, we would follow the law, decommission this project appropriately, take out all of the infrastructure, and when all of the equipment is out of the ground, we would ensure that the land itself is back to the pre-construction conditions.
There will be soil testing to make sure nothing is leached into that ground that would prohibit it from being farmland again?
We would, at the time of decommissioning, we would follow all local and state requirements. If that's part of it, yes.
Thank you.
This caption says, energy produced by solar farm. What percentage of the energy produced will stay in the local grid?
So the way that, and hopefully your subsequent questions can pile here. So the way that this works is the solar facility collects the energy from the sun. We convert it into energy that flows to our local substation and eventually our point of interconnect. At the point of interconnect, the voltage is increased to a matter that can enter into the grid. The grid has independent operators, service operators that dictate the capacity, who can turn, the capacity of who needs the lights turned on and how much power needs to go to where it needs to go. That is managed by the independent service operator. Our solar facility just injects capacity into that grid. So where the power goes, that is up to the independent service operator.
Okay. How much energy do you expect your project to produce on an annual basis? Please provide a comparison to the annual output of a gas-powered generation station.
The Owensboro Solar Project will generate up to 200 megawatts of American-made renewable energy.
How much energy is lost in transmission from this site to the end user?
Again, we inject into the grid. The independent service operator manages the capacity and where that energy flows to.
This caption, and Brooke, I texted you, but apparently you don't have your phone on you. I thought we had emailed eight pages of questions, but I don't have 8 pages of questions here. And so I just wondered, do we need to look and see if there's missing questions?
I think that,
Probably, yes.
I think the original was larger, like larger font, but these are your questions.
I want to make absolutely sure before we call it a day, okay? But yes, Commissioner.
He's probably missing the resident.
This caption is sale of the subsidiary. How many utility-scale solar farms originally leased from private farmland owners have been sold to public utility companies?
NextEra Energy owns, develops, constructs, manages, and operates electric generation facilities and wholesale energy markets in the U.S. and Canada. and includes assets and investments in other clean energy businesses such as nuclear, transmission, battery, energy storage, and natural gas pipelines.
Do you plan to sell or transfer ownership of the project after construction or once it is operational? If ownership changes, how will you ensure that all local agreements, promises, and mitigation measures are honored?
We will follow the law. NextEra Energy will comply with all the requirements. As required by the state law, NextEra Energy will report to the Kentucky PSC and State Siting Board, local municipalities, and affected landowners in the event of an ownership change. We would need permission to do so.
How do we make sure that after you leave this position as project manager, that promises and mitigation measures are honored by the next project manager?
Yeah, so it's not about who's in this seat. It's about the company dictating who is responsible for this project, make sure that we follow the state and local municipality requirements and just the state law when we are pursuing this venture.
Will the original owner or developer remain legally and financially responsible for project issues like flooding, fire, and noise complaints if the project is sold?
So in accordance to the state requirements, NextEra Energy will maintain the responsibility until a new owner has provided a EEC proof of all the required obligations and a bond is in place. There will be requirements at the state level before this can even be considered to change hands. Once the new owner has established these, NextEra Energy Resources would have transferred that responsibility to the new owner. There are requirements in place, mitigation conditions that in the state case files that reflect those transfer of ownership requirements, and that the new owner has to pretty much inherit or follow all of the original agreements.
Okay. Will you publicly disclose the buyer and provide community notice if a project is sold at any point in its life cycle?
We will comply with the state and local requirements in the event of a change of ownership.
If the project is sold, who will be responsible for maintenance, emergency response, decommissioning, and honoring any community benefit agreement?
Once we transfer ownership, it'll be the new owner's responsibility to maintain and be responsible for the site.
Can you guarantee that this project will not be flipped to a buyer with no physical presence or personnel in our county or state? I cannot make this guarantee as it's not feasible. I don't think it's lawful either to not have a physical presence. As part of the application, we have to consider these agencies that will require information of the new buyer, of a new buyer, from both parties, and that responsibility has to have a new name and a new entity has to exist. So I don't think that's a lawful question here. Sorry, I don't know how else to say that. That's fine. How will decommissioning and maintenance bonds be honored if the project is sold to a new owner?
We will follow the requirements.
How will you ensure that the decommissioning bond and insurance policy remain valid, enforceable, and binding on any future purchaser of the subsidiary?
We will follow all the state and local requirements. Also, just for more information, the decommissioning bond that's required by the Kentucky state law is that it has to be reviewed, and the Energy and Environmental Cabinet require the bond to be reviewed every 5 years as well. So the amount that a potential new buyer receives or maintains the responsibility for would not be more than those 5 years old.
I'm going to suggest that we do a recess, so about a 10 or 15-minute break, if you are open to that.
Yep.
So that we can make sure that the other questions that I don't believe I have in front of me, that we have. So if we'd all like to do that.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
And I've got 9:36, so how about we do
Thank you.
9:45? How about we'll start back up at 9:45, okay? Okay, I'm gonna call us back from the recess that we took. Appreciate our guests accommodating us on that. So just for the public, we had emailed a total of 8 pages of questions to NextEra and also Hillstone. And what we had started with, there were the ones that we just covered were submitted by a group, and they were pretty detailed, and they were I made very few edits, if any, on those when I submitted them to the 2 companies. And the rest of these is 4 pages. Are when I received them, I tried to bundle them and put them in not as direct categorically as other ones. Some of these might be duplicates because I did very little research review of the ones we just covered. But I'm going to just go ahead, Lester, just like we did on the others, and I'm going to read them, and you can give your answer. In a county with pre-existing stormwater challenges, we need to ensure runoff from solar developments is retained to eliminate adverse effects on neighboring properties. Please explain in detail the steps you will take to reduce the increased flooding that these solar farms are certain to create.
I'm happy to answer that. Judge, can I sat with my team. I think it's prudent for us to cover some of the like 3 items that I may have misspoken or I could add clarity on from a
Okay,
previous
you
session.
want to go back to, all right.
Just
We'll
briefly.
come back to this question then.
Yeah, absolutely. I wanted to clean up, Commissioner Marksberry, you asked me if there were NDAs that we signed in our leases, and my legal counsel made me aware that we do have a provision in our agreement for financial information, which is standard. We do have an NDA as it relates to that in our leases. But what I was highlighting is that we don't have a separate NDA that the landowners sign outside of that lease agreement.
So what you're saying is the lease actually has an NDA clause
A provision clause in
Okay.
there.
Okay, thank you.
The second point is on the construction jobs. I think I explained that there's no way to see the numbers. You were asking about percentage of the workers that are out there.
Yes,
But
sir.
I do want to highlight that we hire hundreds of workers. You could have anywhere from 200 to 600, 700 workers that are working these sites at any given point during construction. And we do hire that many people to make sure this gets completed. But in terms of the percentage of that amount, that's what I would, that's the data I don't have available for me. The third point was, and I think we're going to ask this afterwards, to provide the supplemental findings, the studies that we talked about earlier. We will provide that to you. I want to also, we talked about property values as well. I think we should also point out the case files in the Kentucky State Siting Board where they found and held that solar facilities do not impact surrounding property values. our legal counsel, myself, we will make sure that you get those case files as well.
Thank you.
All right, now to the question at hand.
Okay. And I'm gonna read it again for those who don't have a hard
No,
copy
it's
like-
fine. So this a lot of the resident so there were two segments to this. The first portion was for the fiscal court questions. These are the residents' questions. I understand.
Actually, the first batch of questions were submitted by a group,
Okay,
and they told me I'm gonna just say became self-taught experts
Okay.
when this project came down the pike, when they became aware of it, and spent many hundreds of hours cumulative researching this topic. And these questions, those before the break, 100% of those questions were submitted by one person on behalf of the group.
gotcha.
And I didn't do, like I said, I don't think I did any editing or very little editing of those questions. These others were like just random, individual citizens of their own accord sent one or two or three questions, but not a bundle of questions the way we just covered. And again, I've tried to go through before I submitted them to you. Brooke and I tried to go through them, and we tried to make sure we were not, even if I edited them, that I was not omitting somebody's question. And if anybody says, hey, you didn't ask my question, Brooke and I can tie directly to these numbered questions. So anyway, I'm going to read the first one again. In a county with pre-existing stormwater challenges, we need to ensure runoff from solar developments is retained to eliminate adverse impacts on neighboring properties. Please explain in detail the steps you will take to reduce the increased flooding that these solar farms are certain to create.
So, number one, of course, as I mentioned in the past, we'll work with the county on whatever those requirements are. As part of the state requirements, the KPDES, the Kentucky Pollution Discharge Elimination Stormwater Permit. Wow, that was a mouthful. So that permit is a requirement for all of our sites, given that we're impacting more than 1 acre, as we mentioned before. As part of that, there is a SWIP component, the stormwater, wow, I catch myself every time. The Stormwater Pollution Prevention Plan analyzes the stormwater runoff of the site during construction. And that is part of what we do, which is state mandated, and the construction activity, for the construction activities that disturb this acreage, floodplain permitting ensures that the post-construction water flow is equal to or less than the pre-construction conditions. The facilities continued natural filtration and minimizes the potential for changes in downstream water flow. So in essence, we're looking at the site, we're getting these permits, and we'll work with the county on any additional requirements.
Okay. Since not much grows in the shade, how will erosion from water runoff be prevented?
Yep, this permit we just talked about works to mitigate stormwater runoff to nearby streams and wetlands. As required by the permit, the Owensboro Solar Project, will install and maintain erosion and sediment control devices, such as sediment basins or traps where water can flow into, and or buffer zones, areas with sensitive resources, or around sensitive resources. Once the construction is complete, the affected areas will be treated with a perennial grass and herbaceous seed mix, and inspected until vegetation in the target area has met the permit conditions highlighted in the KPDES. Rainwater will naturally drain off of the panels to the adjacent vegetated ground surface. So all of the runoff is something that we alongside the EPC study extensively. Number one, for the permit needs, but two, for the civil analyses and design that we talked about earlier.
Numerous videos exist documenting flooding that is made worse by large areas of solar panels. How will you mitigate the increased flooding?
We'll work with the county on these permits. They consider these runoff scenarios.
The 1997 floodwaters reached my driveway, but the floodwaters did not reach my house. Won't the ground's inability to absorb water only worsen the flooding and make the floodwaters deeper? How will you mitigate this situation?
So as part, like we mentioned, as part of the permit, they're required to create these sediment basins, make sure that the water flow is conducive to the construction activity that's ongoing. Did you say did you give me a date there?
It was a 1997 flood.
Yeah. I think since then, some of the permit requirements have changed, considering some of the local weather events.
Okay. To what extent will the solar farm developer maintain the entire area of the project for the life of the project relative to appearance, drainage, and ongoing monitoring of the footprint developed? Please be specific.
Yeah, so there are permits specific to the construction phase, and then there's permits that extend through the life of the project. We will comply with all of those requirements, work with the county, make those requirements visible, known to the county, and make sure that throughout the life of the project, there's no concern that NextEra Energy will be there to manage and operate the site, but also follow the Kentucky state law at the state and local levels.
How will noxious weeds be controlled, and who will be responsible for the control of said weeds?
Can I give that question to Brian? Is he
Sure.
still in here? Okay.
Brian, if you would come to the mic. I'm going to read this question, but Lester said this is for you. How will noxious weeds be controlled? Who will be responsible for the control of said weed?
Good morning, Brian Bartles with the Environmental Services team at NextEra. So for invasive weeds, we typically work with our engineering procurement contractor to create a vegetative management plan to address any noxious weeds that may be on site. Typically, we try to address those before construction, and any disturbed areas are seeded with a cover crop to prevent any infiltration of noxious weeds that could be on site. And then during construction and operation, we follow the vegetative management plan to ensure that any weeds or anything that comes up that's undesirable on site is either mowed or treated with a selective spot treatment of herbicide.
Okay. Will the developer mow, weed eat, trim, and maintain water flow areas so as to not intrude on abutting property owners? If yes, how will this be carried out?
So we'll try to maintain existing water flows and the hydrology on site to the greatest extent practicable. But a lot of the procedures on how to maintain the site is captured in that vegetative management plan. We have ideas that are needed to be captured in that plan, and we work with the EPC, who then finalizes the plan and creates site-specific management practices.
Are you using the phrase vegetative management plan?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm kind of hard of hearing. And,
Sorry. Yeah. No.
yeah. And next item, Lester. Thank you.
Thanks, Brian.
Thank you.
How many signed solar contracts do you have in Daviess County as of today? And how many total acres do these contracts represent?
We have 5 landowners that we have entered into agreements with. Among those 5 landowners, we have about 1,200 acres leased land. Now, I want to highlight that that will be made public. That information will be public once we apply for these permits. As part of the Kentucky State Siting Board, we will submit a final site plan, which shows the difference between total acreage and what we actually utilize on those parcels.
Commissioner Mark Sperry.
You mentioned the siting board. Where do you all stand with the siting board now? What is your current status?
We have 4 approved projects with them. We have relationships. We think we have a good relationship with the siting board.
What is your current status?
I'm not
with the
sure.
siting board?
In terms of status, I'm not sure I understand the question.
Isn't a siting board unique? I mean, I know it's a state siting board, but when I call them to ask how that works, my understanding is that I believe I'm right, that our the chair, either the chair or the director of planning and zoning would be one of the members of the siting board for Daviess County, for a project in Daviess County. So are you aware of that, what the composition of that is?
I'm not 100% sure of the structure of the siting board. Do we have additional comments on that?
Would you step to the mic? Please? And again, state your name for those who might be watching at home.
I'm Meredith Cave with the Honaker Law Office on behalf of NextEra. The composition of the siting board is set out in the regs, and I will tell you it is complicated on all the different steps that they have to go to pick their different boards, their board members. That's the best I can tell you. It's in the regs, and there are many, many steps to get a diverse board that sits for these applications.
Okay, thank
Judge,
you.
I have a follow-up.
Go
I didn't
ahead.
get finished.
Go ahead, Commissioner.
Okay, Case Management System, Kentucky Public Service Commission, 2024-00387, that is Owensboro Solar LLC. Case Code Merchant Plant Board Decision. Index of events, so it starts in 12/9/24 where you filed an application to have the solar panel. The most recent filing was August 26th of 25. Final order entered, case is closed and removed from the siting board's document.
Correct.
Y'all please explain that. Thank
So in the beginning, last year, when we initiated those open houses, there were some concerns about us starting the permitting process and believing we can build without the consent. As part of the construction certificate application process, we had to have those open houses, give a overview of what our intent was in the county, and we would to submit a notice of intent to the Kentucky State Siting Board. We submitted that with the hopes that we had a clear path forward at the county level with the setbacks that existed at the time. We had a path forward. Our intent was to apply to the CUP and the Kentucky State Siting Board application in parallel to achieve our end goal, which is both permits. Now, since the 1,000-foot setback was implemented, we've gone back and forth a few times on the direction of the county and with renewable energy. We didn't see that it surpassed the I believe 6 months, 180 days of a limit on the NOI before we either have to reapply or close the case file. And since we're working here with you today, we had to submit and close the file for now.
Well, you said it well. Good job.
Thank you.
It said Heather Temple.
Yes, Heather Temple's my colleague.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
All right, thank you. Why do you have non-disclosure agreements signed by the property owners who are signing lease agreements with you that are entering negotiations with you?
The land leases are made public outside of this confidentiality provision in the land agreements, which is we're redacting the financials of the agreement. All of that becomes memorandums that are publicly on record.
Okay. If these solar farm projects are so wonderful to our community, why require non-disclosure agreements to those choosing to lease their land for these projects?
I would answer that the same way. These leases are made public. Part of the Kentucky State Siding Board is to include the lease agreements. We share the agreements with the OMPC as part of the application process, and that's all available to the citizens of Daviess County.
Okay. I'm going to just read what's on there. Isn't the real reason you require non-disclosure agreements so that the non-leased landowners won't know that you're putting on a solar farm, so they cannot organize to fight until it is too late? If that is not the reason, please explain what is.
In the defense to any citizen, it is their private right to do these things, to not share financial information with outside of their constituents, or how they decide to do this however they want to share their financial information. Everything outside of that provision, that confidentiality provision, is made public.
Okay. Commissioner Marksberry.
Thank you, Judge. So have you, following up on these type questions of non-disclosure agreements, have you all encountered any county in which you have signed a lease, or that they have had into an ordinance where once a lease is signed on a property, it has to be made public within so many days? And you don't have to disclose the financials in that, just this property is under lease for a potential solar farm. Have you all encountered that anywhere across Kentucky?
We record our agreements once they're executed.
Once they're executed, just the option to lease?
Everything but what's redacted is submitted as a memorandum into record, into public.
So where's it
record.
recorded here for this one?
I'm sorry.
Where is it recorded? Here in Daviess County?
Is it recorded in the clerk's office, or is it recorded as part of your application?
It gets recorded based on it's a whole legal process to get things recorded, but that can be a post hearing question. I can get a specific, unless we have that with us.
Your attorney's here. Can you answer? I'm sorry.
The process to recording, is that your question?
No.
Is it recorded and where for Daviess County?
Right, so
Where?
if we wanted to go, if it's recorded in a public place and we wanted to go see it, where might we go? And by we, I mean any citizen.
Of course.
It's Meredith Cave with the Honaker Law Office on behalf of NextEra again. I have not done these leases with NextEra yet, but I can tell you what standard practice is. Typically, when you enter into a lease agreement with some of these landowners, you will then record a memorandum of lease with the clerk's office. It's on record the same way as a deed would be, like it's attached to a title. If someone wants to search and see that this property is under lease, you can see that. A memorandum of lease doesn't typically contain all of the lease terms, but it's going to give you enough information to reach out to the appropriate contact points. Like typically, if I was the lease preparer, it would have my name on it or something like that, so that you can follow up that way. But the terms of the lease won't necessarily be recorded in the clerk's office. And then I think what Lester is getting at what is recorded with the Public Service Commission through the Kentucky Siding Board is when they file their application, a lot of times there will be data requests or requests for information that will require NextEra to provide those leases. A lot of times those leases are provided pursuant to a confidentiality agreement to protect NextEra's competitive advantage in the market. That's going to be the same way with any business owner, as I hope you all would understand. And so certain portions of those leases would be redacted depending on who is either a party to the proceeding at the Kentucky Siding Board and signs a confidentiality agreement, and then you can see the full terms of that lease. Does that make sense? Do you have any questions about
Or
that?
does it include the location of the property for the public to see?
It should include
As
the
an
location.
exhibit.
That typically wouldn't be redacted.
There's an exhibit highlighting the title level a deed of where the property is located.
So again, has that been filed here in Daviess County?
Yes.
And it's in our clerk's office?
Well, we recently had to extend our agreements with the landowners. So we have that executed. We're in the process of actually recording those
So you
now.
haven't recorded the new lease?
I don't know the status as of like right now, but their recording doesn't take that long. I think it's done.
If the memorandum of lease has been recorded, it would be in the clerk's office, and that's something I can add to our follow-up list for you. If I can send you a list of all the ones that have been recorded to date, if you would like those.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Just,
Commissioner Conley.
excuse me. No, she's going to sit
I
down.
believe he's got a follow-up.
There we go. To clarify, you have several different documents that you're talking about legally. The first being the option itself, regardless of whatever happens beyond that, because you may not have gotten to the point of whether you have your memorandum or your memorandum of intent or your actual lease. But the first step being the option. So the options, I assume, have been in place for at least 2, maybe 3 years. I'm going to guess that's the case. So if, with that being the situation, are those options filed with the clerk for review? Do you know that?
I don't know that answer for sure. Typically, it's an option contract, and the option contract doesn't function as a lease. I have not done those for NextEra. In my experience, typically the option would not be recorded with the clerk's office, but I will add that to my follow-up, and I can figure that out for sure for you.
And so with that being the case, then you move to the next agreements.
Once the option is exercised, yes.
That's when everything else will be filed. So
Correct.
if your option has not been exercised, everything else behind that has not been recorded because they don't exist yet.
Correct.
Thank you.
Yes, and I'm speaking from my standard experience, just to be fair. Yes, thank you.
Next question, Lester. I believe these leases should be made public to protect all property owners that are nearby. Is there any law that requires them to be made public? If yes, what is the required timeline for making them public?
So we have these leases, and I have it in my notes here that the lease memos, the memorandum records, are to be made public within 60 to 90 days post execution. And I think we're within that period right now.
And that would be the memorandum of lease that Meredith spoke to.
Correct.
Okay.
And these leases that were signed, I think I hear a common kind of tone in the questions, which is this made public? I think that the answer here is clear, yes. They're made public. Once they're recorded, that's the process.
So if someone wanted to see if anybody else is in the process of doing solar farms in Daviess County or somewhere else, they could maybe search the clerk's records for these memorandum of lease agreements.
That's correct.
Okay. How many dollars of federal funds are you, the solar company, receiving per acre on a project? If this question is read literally, and you can say 0 for today, how many federal subsidies in the form of tax credits or any other financial benefit from the government do you expect to receive over the life of this project?
I think I understand this question to be, it can be taken 2 ways. Are we receiving federal funding to allow this project to be economically feasible? That answer to that question is no. We will construct this project if we're given the ability to do so according to the ordinances, the local and state requirements. We would invest the capital to make sure that the project gets built. Now, there's a second component to this, which I think is also targeting here, is the federal with the big beautiful bill and all of that good stuff that's very popular right now. Those are tax incentives. Those are economic benefits that come after the project is already operational. We are working on both sides of the aisle continuously for all of our projects to make sure that we are voice and we understand the requirements, and we're implementing those requirements, but they do not impact or affect our ability to construct this project.
Mr. Ponder.
Thank you, Judge. Just to clarify, Lester, you mentioned HR 1, Big Beautiful Bill, Section 70,501 through 70,530, most likely, to where it specifically talks about green or green energies. In one section specifically, it talks about that the beginning construction of solar or green initiatives must begin by July 4th of 2026. That's specific in the bill itself. Or by the end of 2027 must be in service. One way or the other. Those requirements are very specific, and they are not necessary. They're not negotiable unless somebody else really changes that. Well, so with that timeline, this is fast to be able to try to make this type of initiative, whether it's here or anywhere else in the United States. This is a very fast timeline to do so. So with that being the case, and you referenced the subsidies. This means that in order to do this, to be eligible for any other tax credits, you've got to follow along with what the rules are. So let's assume that doesn't happen. Was your comment earlier that this project, any solar project, depending on location, I get that, but in this one in particular, standalone, without any help, is viable?
We have the capital to build this project.
Well, that's that's just funding.
Yeah,
I'm talking about making it an economically viable project, that it actually breaks even.
Yeah, so I understand your question to see how the Big Beautiful Bill impacts economically the project. I want to highlight for everyone in the room that before the tax incentives that Joe Biden administration implemented and gave these taxes incentives to the industry, essentially, to construct these projects, there was a spike in the amount of companies and investments that became a topic in this industry, right? We were around prior to that, constructing these projects around the nation. So whether the economic or the geopolitical arena and landscape is changing, our ability to stand alone aside from these different bills and political positions, we are able to construct these projects and make them, and they are an economic, they provide economic benefits to us, yes.
So basically, the subsidies can go away, and they work. Thank you in that regard, Judge. I got that. That's a pretty big question that needed to be answered. Is it economically viable without help? And he's stating that it is. Thank you.
What I'm hearing you say is you all were in the business before all the incentives came. Pretty much incentives got more players into the, I guess, to be competitors or peers. But even if they go away because the credits go away, you all will remain.
Yes, there are things that we are capable of doing. There's a reason why we're the only ones sitting here working alongside the fiscal court, pushing amidst the hurdles that are in front of us from a setback standpoint. You know, we work alongside local and state and even federal administrations to try to make these projects work at a foundational level. Now, when it comes to our economic investment, each investment is its own, each project is its own. That's why it's named Owensboro Solar LLC. We are here because we want to do this and we can do this.
If all subsidies, and I think you've just addressed this, if all subsidies, local, state, and federal, were eliminated, would a solar farm be financially feasible as a standalone business model?
Yes.
What is the life expectancy of a solar field?
We enter into 20 to 30 year agreements with a customer. We do not have a customer at this time, but that is the standard life cycle of our facilities.
Okay. If a panel is damaged for whatever reason, is it repaired within a reasonable time frame? And what is that time frame?
I wish my engineer was here for that question, but so as we mentioned earlier, our panels, our facilities are monitored. We're gauging voltage, temperature, all of the good stuff. And so technically, when a solar panel is damaged in a particular area of the solar field, they can that'll be an indicator, a trigger at the top level, at our rock level, and they will send someone out there to repair those areas.
Do you have a clue what that timetable is, that time frame?
The clock starts as soon as it's identified, so I can answer that at a post as a post hearing request.
Okay, thank you. What other remedies should the solar company go bankrupt? For example, does another company buy your assets and just keep producing power? Or does the solar farm get abandoned and go back to nature?
So this one's an interesting question. So in the unlikely event that that we would go bankrupt, there are bonds in place prior to the start of construction that can be enacted, and they would trigger the conditions necessary to get the funds out of those bonds to decommission the site. That is the worst case scenario.
Let me ask you, and I'm going to ask a philosophical because I was in the banking world for some years, and when a bank's about to fail, usually the FDIC tries to get somebody to come in and buy it and rescue it. And so one day it's I don't know, Larry Connor's bank, and the next day it's mine, and so they shepherd that transfer from the failed company to the new company. In the solar world, is there any such thing, or would it strictly be a decommissioning if somebody? And I'm not saying your company necessarily. There could be others locate here, where if a bankruptcy happens in the industry, does somebody else buy that? Because it was producing power yesterday and they're either bankrupt today, would those assets not be sold off, or would it strictly go the route you said, which is the decommissioning?
I haven't been put in that position. I don't know how to answer that, but what I can say is that we put the mitigation in place prior to start of construction, forecasting a worst case scenario. If that were to happen, we have the means to decommission the site with or without our presence if the conditions are met, which are highlighted in the conditional use permit or the Article 8.59G. You give those conditions of when the security performance bond it triggers it to be enacted. The site would become abandoned at that point, and you would be able to use the funds that are evaluated every 5 years to get rid of the site.
Okay, thank you. I recently saw pictures of solar panels that were destroyed by a massive hailstorm. What happens on a solar farm if the storm causes damage? How can the cleanup be handled? What is the process if the solar farm is damaged beyond repair?
So it's similar to the previous question about making sure that we are identifying where the problem is located, going out there and repairing the site. Now, these solar panels are tested by the manufacturer to withstand the weather conditions, but we can't predict Mother Nature and things can happen. We would work expeditiously to make sure it gets repaired in a timely fashion.
Once a solar farm is beyond its useful life, who bears the cost and responsibility for the removal and the cleanup?
NextEra Energy.
Will the property automatically revert to its prior zoning agricultural after solar panel equipment is removed?
Sorry, I was getting my notes here together. Can you ask the question again? Sorry.
Yes. Will the property automatically revert to its prior zoning agricultural after solar panel equipment is removed?
Yeah, so that is a OMPC question. We would follow the requirements at the time to make.
Okay.
I mean, it's on the OMPC to correctly zone.
And Brian, if you don't mind speaking to that.
Brian Howard, Planning Office. This is not a zoning change, so the zoning would remain the same. The process that is adopted currently locally would be a conditional use permit for approval. Now, I mean, through this review process, you all could change that, but currently it's not a zoning change.
Okay.
May I?
Go ahead, Commissioner
Brian,
Roxbury.
thanks. So what is this land currently zoned?
My assumption is the property they're talking about
Yes,
would be
sir.
zoned
Yes.
agricultural.
Which one? Which agricultural zone?
I would assume AR rural agriculture, but
Okay.
I mean,
So are solar panels, farms like this permitted in that zone?
they are conditionally permitted in that zone.
Conditionally permitted?
Correct.
Okay. What would be a condition, just for the public's sake? Is there something you
Well,
could let us know,
yeah.
what you would look for to?
Well, the conditionally permitted means that it could be allowed with a conditional use permit. That is the public hearing that the Board of Adjustment holds where neighbors are notified, and the provisions of the ordinance are upheld. The Board of Adjustment can implement any conditions that they deem necessary to make sure that the project would properly integrate within the area.
So it would go to vote, basically, with the local
At the Board of
boards?
Adjustment, that's
Okay,
correct.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brian.
Yep.
Who is responsible for decommissioning and returning the property to its original state?
NextEra Energy.
Okay. Does bonding that is required cover the cost in question, the prior question that you just answered, in the event the solar farm owner, operator files bankruptcy?
So in the event that we in the rare event that we file for bankruptcy, who would be responsible? Sorry, I didn't, where is that question?
It's question 22.
Does the cost in question? Yeah, so this is independent from the decommissioning bond that's in place. The decommissioning bond, as mentioned in your the conditions in your Article 8, those are the conditions that need to be in place to trigger the money that's available to decommission. Whether someone goes bankrupt or not, or whatever the case might be, if these conditions are met, we can access the funds to decommission the project.
I know bonding is required to cover the cost of decommissioning and returning the property to its original condition. What is the recourse for the property owner and potentially the county government if the solar farm is abandoned prior to decommissioning?
Abandonment seems to be one of the conditions.
That would trigger the bond
Would
being
trigger the
used.
bond to decommission the site.
This question says, who would cover the cost of pollution cleanup and decommissioning in the prior question?
NextEra Energy Resources.
Little has been discussed about the risk of contaminants so far. What contaminants have been shown to exist in solar panels that might be released if the panels are under floodwaters for an extended period of time?
A lot of our permits consider the floodplain zone. We build the structure of our facility to consider where it's located. In the event that worst case scenario, the flood is the hypothetical here can go a million different ways. But I will go back to my prior statement on what the panels are made of is not conducive to a contamination the way it's scripted here.
Commissioner Marksberry.
Thank you. I'm sorry, Lester, could you repeat? Did you say that property that you're currently looking at is not in the flood zone, none of the 1,200 acres?
No, what I was mentioning for clarity is that all of our sites consider where the equipment will be placed. If the design is located in a flood zone, which it is here, we would get the permits required to either be able to build there, or we would simply stay out of the area if possible.
Okay, thank you for clarifying.
A prior question addressed a massive hailstorm damaging a solar farm. What contaminants have been shown to exist in solar panels that might be released due to be busting by hail?
All right, so it's glass and metal, right? If you hit it, it'll be similar to a windshield cracking. And something drastic would have to happen to open the panel. And even if you open the panel, it will not discharge these any contaminants into the ground. If it is, it'll be minor, and it will not be a spreading issue.
Regarding the prior two questions, what processes will be in place to limit widespread contamination beyond the borders of the solar farm? And what processes exist to clean up the contamination on a solar farm itself?
Yeah, I would answer that the same way.
Okay. What plans exist to address safety and health concerns regarding solar farms?
I would go back to our emergency action plan. All of the permits that we have, all of the consultations we would do with your fire department, your emergency responders. Safety is our top concern and our top priority for us. So in creating these plans prior to starting construction, we make sure that the Daviess County emergency responders are included in that plan.
Okay. Claims exist that panels, batteries, transformers, and other equipment on solar farms can sometimes catch fire. What plans exist to deal with electrical fires should they occur? And then there's another question right behind that. Regarding question 29, fires can sometimes be caused by water shorting out on an electrical system, and oil leaking from transformers can create a fire. How will these situations be addressed, both from a standpoint of prevention and resolution if a fire starts? So if you could kind of answer both of those together.
Yeah, I think part of your prior questions addressed a similar concern. So I would answer that the same way that I answered your claim in the public health and safety concern of your first segment. The likelihood of this catching fire and spreading is low. This material is made up of glass and metals, and it's not easily ignited. When we talk about the inverter units and pad mount transformers, which are which are a potential source for fire. It typically contains like vegetable oil or mineral oils that do not spread or not hazardous materials. In the event a piece of equipment did catch fire, the lack of fuel at the site is expected to prevent the fire from spreading beyond its boundaries.
Okay. Commissioner Marksberry.
Thank you, Judge. So common fire hazards at solar farms are faulty wiring, overheating electrical equipment and poor installation, vegetation accumulation, component failures. DC isolators, connectors, and inverters are the source of many solar farm fires. Fires in solar farms can also release toxic chemicals, which pose additional risk to first responders. If you wouldn't mind to respond to that, please.
What's the question? I know the situation. but-
So component failures, basically, let's
Yeah.
talk about that.
Yes.
And toxic chemicals that could be released from these fires. You know, what is the additional risk to first responders? And, you know, are component failures typically what would cause a fire at a solar farm?
So these are unlikely events that we're constantly monitoring. I think what I was explaining earlier was that we are constantly 24/7 monitoring these facilities to make sure that the voltage, the performance at every level are on the green, right, from a spectrum, either too low, too high, what's going on. Our renewable our ROC essentially is our control center. So our renewable operations control center monitors these sites, and if something is off, we can detect those type of abnormalities before they even happen, and we can get someone out there to inspect what is going on. I can't speak for any other project, but that's the safety protocol that we adhere to.
Has NextEra or any other of the subsidiaries experienced solar farm fires like this?
None that are under me. I haven't experienced that.
What about the company?
I can answer that in a post hearing. I can investigate that.
Okay, that'd be great. Thank you.
There is, excuse me, there is no actual proof or statistics that large industrial solar projects, and it says not wind farms, don't lower neighboring property values. Yet it is obvious and common sense that they would. Who is going to buy or build a house overlooking an ugly solar project? Therefore, how would you plan to adequately compensate those of us who have spent our lives developing or purchasing surrounding property values? And then right behind that is, how will this solar farm impact my property value?
Yeah, I think the studies that we forward over to the fiscal court can address our position on that, where we don't see the negative impact that this question assumes.
We are residents whose property is adjacent to this proposed 1,200-acre solar project. We just found out about this in January of 2025. We found out about it by word of mouth, through our neighbors. We're deeply concerned and against industrial solar on Daviess County farmland. We understand there was a generic postcard sent, which we did not recall receiving. The example postcard that looked like junk mail that my neighbors shared in no way indicated where the project was located or that leases were already underway for over a year plus. To date, what notifications of nearby property owners have been required? What documentation do you have to prove these requirements were met?
So we as part of the Kentucky State Siting Board application process, we have to prove that we did two things. We had an open house within a certain amount of time of our notice of intent, and then we had sent these mailings out to anyone within, I believe, 2,400 feet of the project boundary. We have to prove that to the siting board, and we've done that for all of our projects. We will continue to follow the local and state requirements, work with you all to, on the CUP as well. This notification will address the construction plans, the noise potential, any mitigation plans, and the board's complaint resolution plan. I can provide that resource to you where, from the PSC, or the Kentucky State Siding Board, and provide any case filings that are requested where we met this requirement.
With regard to what you all mailed out and your meeting that you held, and I don't recall who, but someone texted me a picture of the postcard, right? I mean, probably the day before, saying, hey, just FYI. And even myself, who hold an elected position here in the county, I didn't recognize it as something, I guess, as an important meeting to attend, so I didn't. Had I known exactly what it was, I feel certain I would have been there and probably shared it with the commissioners up here with me, just so we would all been equally informed. The meeting that you all had, do you know how many total notices you sent out, and do you know what your attendance was at that meeting?
Attendance, I can speak to quite a few landowners. I don't see them here today, joined that meeting. In terms of the communication to the fiscal court, if you don't live within 2,400 feet of the property, you may not have received the mailing that went out. I did work with Melissa prior to ensure that the Planning Commission was aware of this activity, because we were applying to the CUP in tandem. So members of the OMPC were aware. We should have forwarded, and I think we've spoken about this in the past, where we'll make sure that the fiscal court also gets the notifications.
Okay.
I have a question.
Commissioner Marksberry.
Yes, thank you, Judge. And you did touch on a lot of what I was going to ask, but prior to this open house, you did meet with planning and zoning, correct?
Yeah, a few times.
A few times.
Yes.
Okay, so, but no local officials were invited to your open house?
No, the intent of our meetings was to understand the requirements that the OMPC has, electrical permits, building permits, what we were to expect from a requirement standpoint. That was the purpose of our meetings.
Thank you.
The next question says, regarding the question that you just answered, why wasn't a registered letter sent to those of us directly impacted? In other words, instead of the postcard, why wouldn't you have sent a registered letter?
We're following the current requirements.
So the Kentucky Siding Board does not require one then?
The Kentucky State Siding Board, and Meredith can speak on this, is to send mail notices to every resident within that range. Okay. And I'll let her expound on that.
Meredith Cave with the Honaker Law Office on behalf of NextEra. So the Siding Board regulations, similar to the PSC regulations, for any utility or a merchant generating facility, which is what NextEra is, they have different notice requirements depending on, sometimes it varies between the type of energy being provided, whether it's solar, whether it's electric, whether it's gas, or it depends on the level of, capacity or wattage can determine the radius of notice that you have to give, how many customers you might be serving, or in this case, if it's solar, you're selling it into the grid. So all that's in the regs as to where the customer notice needs to go and what the customer notice needs to contain. So that's going to be in the regulations for the Kentucky Siding Board. And we can send you copies of those if you'd like. And I also have already written on my list that we will send you a copy of that notice as well so that you can review that if you haven't already.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you've already answered this, but I'm still going to read it. Is the power from your solar farm project for local electric service in the Daviess County community? And then right behind that, is the power from your solar farm project for the grid Is it a merchant plant, and who will benefit from the creation of this power?
So I can explain it again. So once the site is operational, the solar panels collect the renewable energy. It's distributed through our collection lines to a collector substation, or they're playing with the voltage at that point. The voltage is then converted into a voltage that can inject into the grid. Once the power is in the grid, meaning it's going wherever the independent service operators decide it wants to go, we don't necessarily have control over that. That's given to the independent service operators like MISO. So Kentucky has 4, and MISO Zone 6 is the one that we would be applicable to. Once it goes into MISO's capacity grid, they are then playing with who needs the power and when, things like weather, things like when the sun is out, nighttime, daytime. There's a lot of conditions that they consider when they're distributing power. We, NextEra, we have to give that ability to them. We don't have any control over that.
Okay. The second question that I read right into that is this going to be a merchant plant?
We would be
I'm not familiar with that term, but that's what
a merchant.
yeah.
Yeah, as Meredith just mentioned, yes, we would be considered a merchant in this business case.
What Commissioner Condor?
Thank you, Judge. In this regard of the power itself being produced, to maybe simplify this, maybe it's a little oversimplified.
Yeah.
But let's do this. You have the Ohio River out here, so I'm going to go online and I'm going to sell a gallon of water to somebody in New Orleans. That's what I'm going to do. So I take a gallon of water, pour it in the Ohio River. At the exact same time, somebody in New Orleans takes a gallon of water out. Now, is it the same gallon of water? No. Is it the same kilowatt? No. It's just what will happen is physically the molecules change hands as to what's available in the area of where you need it. That's basically what happens. So in this case, when you look back for our area, specifically, especially MISO, during August 12th through about August 16th, the MISO grid, which extends all the way from Western Kentucky all the way up into Canada, and it's a tremendous area, was on one day in particular, a little over 8,000 megawatts from having a brownout. And that's simply because of the strain on the system, the entire system, because of 110, 115 degree temperatures. What these type of projects do is they're looking at areas of where the power is needed, where it's necessary over a long period of time. Now, what happens, though, to clarify even more, is you throw on AI centers in these scenarios. The strain on our power grid, not only technically, because it's so old and needs a dramatic redo on the entire grid, but you will see a significant strain on the system itself that is already happening, especially on the eastern seaboard. It's happening already, and it's moving further into our area simply because of the need of power. Now, is this end all be all? Nope. Sun doesn't shine all the time. Wind doesn't blow all the time. It doesn't. It's a matter of baskets is what this basically comes down to. So we had an issue. We recently, back on August 12th, where potentially a brownout in the entire MISO area was going to occur. You had power costs. Our power cost here locally is for the residents is about 13.5 to 14 cents per kilowatt hour. During that time frame, it was 26 cents. It doubled on those time frames. So that means if your bill was, say, $400 or $500, which is bad, even in August, you would be looking at $1,100 electric bill if you were buying power at that level. Not that you are, but if you were. So adding those baskets into that eases that pressure. Doesn't get rid of it. It will just ease the pressure. So just wanted to clarify what Lester, I think, was trying to do, because this is a little confusing as to who is actually buying the power. Physically, it just goes to the least resistance. On paper, it could go to up to Canada if necessary. But there's a big difference between the physical side and the paper side. Thank you, Judge.
Yes, thank you for that, Commissioner. So yes, the electricity is like molecules going everywhere. To think that we could, it would be like herding cats, right? Saying, okay, these molecules go to this particular location is pretty much impossible. So I couldn't have said it better. Thank you.
What commitment of policies, procedures, and advocacy will you, the solar farm developer, make to the community at large regarding your corporate citizenship?
Yes, so actually our relationship managers here, I would like for him to speak on some of the many opportunities we've had in the county where we've invested, donated thousands of dollars on different activities, different events. We were at a golfing event on Friday where we were a platinum sponsor. We do a lot of work. So I'll let Jared Daniels speak on that, who's our community engagement manager.
No, probably good morning. Jared Daniels, Community Engagement Manager for NextEra Energy Resources. I want to talk about the relationships that we do have here in the county. We've actually been working in Daviess County for at least 3 years, probably 4. We sponsored various events. One that we like to do, we have a really good relationship with the local Chamber of Commerce here. Another thing that we like to do, I have a really good relationship with Beverly's Hardy Slice in Travis. I actually sit on the board with Beverly Hardy Slice. So we've done homeless giveaway, book bag drives, Christmas drives, Thanksgiving drives. So we've done several things here in the Daviess County community because, to Lester's point, I mean, we want to be a good partner in the community. We're not just here to set up the solar facility and then you never hear from us again. We want to establish a good, long-standing relationship here in Daviess County. And I actually, me personally, I enjoy coming here. Everybody here is really nice. So I've been met with some really good hospitality here, and we want to extend that relationship even further.
Thank you. Why are solar farms being placed on valuable crop-producing land?
So when we go out to look for land, it's something that we have to consider a few elements, right? The resource has to be there, of course. 50% of the day is with sunlight. How much of the resource can we actually get? And in Western Kentucky, we have the resource to do that. We have to consider existing transmission infrastructure, existing road infrastructure. Can we get to the site so that we can construct it appropriately, suitable and available land for the project? We go into these voluntary land agreements with landowners and ensure that we have the contiguous property that we need to construct a large project. And then that we don't have a significant environmental constraint. These are the factors that we look at when we are placing our projects. And it really starts and ends with if we have the land available. Do we have the volunteers from a landowner perspective to lease the land for this amount of time so that we can do our part?
I know in one of our prior conversations, one thing I believe I asked you for, and I know I did the Hillstone folks as well, and I've not received it from either of you, but I'm just curious, if you were to draw a map of Daviess County and say, here's where prime solar land might be. To your point, infrastructure, probably prefer flat, but I don't know that. Just curious, how many total acres in Daviess County might fill the bill if there were no limits on how much solar farms you could put in Daviess County? Now,
Well, in the area, and I think your Article 59, I believe is Section H. We put in here, the reason we did not provide that map is because there was a resource identified by David Smith that located this, it shows the map, and the map when we overlaid our site, we weren't impacting the 1,200 acres limit that, we weren't in that area. And if I may read this section to you, the total number of acres of prime farmland in the unincorporated areas of the county which are permitted to allow level 3 SES shall be limited to 1,200 acres as determined and tracked by Daviess County Fiscal Court. No permits shall be authorized once the total number of permitted acres has been allotted. We were at 0 at that time. Prime farmland means a map unit identified by the Natural Resources Conservation Services of the United States Department of Agriculture as having the best combination of physical and chemical characteristics for producing food, feed, forage, fiber, and oilseed crops, and is available for these uses. So using that resource as the indicator, we were not impacting prime farmland.
right, but that's not my question. My question was if we were just being theoretical, if you were just looking at an overview of Daviess County and you were saying, hey, and say, talking to your team here, and Daviess County's got lots of land available that could fit this. Ignore the prime agriculture. Ignore what you just mentioned.
Okay.
That the transmission lines are there, and it's a good site for a solar field.
Mm-hmm.
How many total acres? I'm just curious. How many total acres in Daviess County might, if there was no limits on how, and y'all wanted to just you're just going to pour all your energy into Daviess County doing power, solar power. How many total acres might we have that fits your all's criteria?
Yeah. I'm not sure. I know I can guarantee we have not done that study because I don't want to oversimplify what our SMEs have to go through to determine if 1,200 acres is feasible. To look at an entire county where we would have a wide spread of panels is a study we don't really do. But it would be way more than 1,200 acres.
I'm sure of that. I mean, our neighbors over in Henderson put a moratorium on once I think they got up to about 5,000 acres, and they were concerned that they just needed a pause. So I just was curious, more a curiosity question. It was not one that was submitted.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am. Commissioner Marksberry.
Yes, okay. Maybe I was drifting, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
It's getting close to lunch. Did you just say David Smith, who is one of our staff members, had given you a map to overlay to look for where you could put 1,200 acres of?
When there was a question, when we were having the initial dialogue with Lester, when I was meeting with him before this, we were speaking specifically of putting a limitation on how much prime agricultural land could be used. And David did provide a map. I don't know where he got it, but he provided a map. This is when we were at the Schertzinger building, that to Lester and his team, showing at least the area that they had identified where these leases are in place. whether or not any of that qualified as prime agricultural land. I think that's what you were talking about, right?
Yeah, the resource was placed in the ordinance.
Right, and it was 1,200 acres determined, and you said by Daviess County Fiscal Court through text amendments. And what is the size of the property you're looking at, this
It's
project?
about 1,000 acres that we have leased. We would try to meet we will meet our nameplate capacity of 150 megawatts within what we have available. Considering the constraints that from an environmental perspective, from a setback perspective, we would use the land that we have and then constrain the buildable area based on these setbacks. And we say, okay, this is the area we have to build within. Considering all of that, can we do this?
Okay. Originally, with your first lease, what was the acreage that you had leased?
We've always had the same amount. It was like 1,000.
It wasn't 1,234 acres,
I
or
thought it was 1264.
1264.
That's the number comes.
was
to
it
mind.
not 1,264
I
acres?
can get you the exact acreage
Okay.
post-hearing, but it was above 1,000.
But it was all within contiguous, it was the same?
It was all contiguous property.
Okay, thank
It's
you.
that's, I'm gonna just say, in a strict definition of the word, I would argue that's not the case. There was a couple landowners or a couple small farms that actually separated some of the property from the rest of it. So. This question, what is the agreeable linear setback by solar farm developers, given the Commonwealth of Kentucky may require a setback of 350 feet?
Yeah, so since we have projects all over the nation, I was able to find a resource for you, and I sent it to each one of you yesterday on what the American Clean Power Association looks at across the board. What is on average a good setback for a solar facility? And I think it was actually less than what Kentucky was looking at, but 350 feet from any residential, or 350 feet from any residential occupied structure. We've seen that in Kentucky, particularly in Breckinridge County. They've required a 300-foot setback. We've seen anything from 50 feet that has been deviated at the Kentucky State Siting Board level from non-participating landowners. And everything that's in the ordinance that was amended in January is about average. What our intent with this amendment was, if you recall, was to make it at least what the state is requiring from these projects, or more strict. In either case, NextEra Energy has devoted ourselves to complying with the more strict requirement. So in the event that the state requires a 350 and Owensboro comes and says, hey, we want it at 351, we would comply with the 351. That's how we plan to develop this project.
Do solar farm developers typically create obstructions or barriers from public view? If yes, what will be provided to that end on your project?
This is part of the vegetative management plan that Brian brought up earlier. We would, part of the Kentucky State Siting Board application, reviewed and approved also in tandem with the Energy and Environmental Cabinet at the state level. They review our plans and requires us to have visual buffers, at least in the plan, in the vegetative management plan.
What zoning will be in place while you operate your solar farm? Agricultural, commercial, industrial? And Brian, I think you spoke to this earlier and you said, if it's ag now, it will remain ag. Okay. In Kentucky, large solar projects are generally not considered agricultural. The Kentucky Department of Revenue advises treating land under large solar arrays commercial, not agricultural. what rules are you using to get final approval on your project and bypass the agricultural zoning we all choose, aspire to live in? And I'm gonna just say, Brian addressed that earlier, or you did, that through a conditional use permit is what our local law allows. I don't have a clue are you familiar with the statement they make, the Kentucky Department of Revenue advises treating land under large solar arrays as commercial, not agricultural?
There are guidances by the state on these designations. At the end of the day, the zoning designations are a local municipality requirement, or it's placed. The designations are the local municipality's responsibility. We will abide by that. If a change in the zoning is needed, we would be there to support that. But yeah, that's on the OMPC in the local municipality.
Okay. This says, what will be the required setbacks from adjoining property owners on your solar farm? And you read what was passed by OMPC on, I think it was January 9th of 2025.
75 feet.
Right. And you say 75 feet?
That's what was passed in January, yes.
Yes.
Or approved.
Right, prior to us putting the 1,000 feet
Correct.
in. Okay. This one says, we strongly encourage adequate setbacks from adjoining property lines. Setbacks may be adjusted with written permission by neighboring landowners. What do you, the solar farm operator, consider to be an adequate setback?
I think that's what we're trying to do here.
Yes. Well, I know you specifically mentioned that Breckenridge County, I thought you said had 300 feet from a residence.
That's what we've seen. The state has its requirements. The local government has the right to put their constraints in there as well. We would comply with the more strict constraint.
Okay. This one says, what is prime farmland? And I'm going to just say it's identified. And if that person will call me, I'll be glad. That's not really for you to answer. This one that was sent to us, have you toured the solar installation in Roberts? I know Commissioner Casson and I both have. I don't know if Commissioner Condor says he has. Commissioner Marksberry says she has not. What is the actual economic impact for your proposed solar farm? That's for you.
These are studies that will be done as part of the Kentucky State Siting Board application, and if your conditional use permit requires it, we would share that information as well.
Commissioner Condor.
Quick comment, Judge, if you please. You know, we mentioned the visiting Robards. I'm not for sure if, I believe you have not, is that correct?
I'm not sure, there's there's like a lot of projects in that
Well,
area.
in Robards area, you can see what it is, and you can tell the differences between the phases of the solar farms. Very evident. I mean, you can look at the ones that were placed probably 3 or 4 years ago. They're lined up, they look decent, they roll with the hills, but then the other ones that are put up look like a hot mess. And they just do. They're like even maybe like 30 feet away from the road itself. They're right there is where they are. But the others were not. So the contractors used makes a big difference of how these plants are put up. And it's a perception issue when you see them just willy-nilly thrown up versus you actually care. It does make a difference. So that's why I think that question was put in there, and it's a great question, to really see the differences between how solar farms are really put in place, okay? The last question the judge said to you, you know, this is a bigger question than just that. Not only the people that are working on the solar farms in the beginning, but also from a state perspective where they're probably going to franchise several of these businesses. I'm going to guess the state of Kentucky is, meaning that any tax revenues, whether it be the property taxes or the ongoing occupational taxes or anything else, school taxes, oh my God, there's a big one for you, that is attached to that will probably be franchised and go to Frankfurt and then come back to the local level. Those projects that you already have in place, especially Henderson County and/or up in Meade County, have you seen any type of results of that revenue generation of what that just an estimate what it is per 100 acres here in our area? Do you know anything like that at all?
Once the project is, sorry, I don't have the individual that could speak on that unless Meredith had a response, but the way I would respond to that is no. I don't have that. The revenue conversation can be a post-hearing request, and I can see how I can respond to that. What I will say is that my job is to develop, construct, and
Sure.
get this project to an operational status.
I understand it's just that, like specifically the one in Henderson that you're a part of, whichever one that is, you probably should have a good idea what is the tax revenue impact for the state of Kentucky and/or school boards or anyone else because it's already been paid. So all you have to do is ask that question, and you should be able to get that fairly quickly. And to boil it down, it's like, what are those rates compared to ours? To just really make sure what is that revenue impact to our community. Thank you, Judge.
Just to piggyback what you just said, and I'm going to go back to question 42, where it says the Kentucky Department of Revenue advises treating land under large solar arrays commercial, not agricultural. I wonder if that's not from a tax standpoint, because I know farms get the agricultural, I'm going to call it the agricultural discount, whereas property.
Commercial does not.
Commercial does not, residential does not.
Yes, correct.
Anyway.
You would hope they'd be good corporate citizens and pay their fair share, wouldn't you? You would hope that.
You would hope. I am curious, it's just strictly a curiosity question, to the question of Turing Roberts. I noticed some of those panels seem to follow the sun. They were the kind that tilt, and the others look like they were just fixed, permanently fixed. What would you all use here, or do you actually mix them depending on where they're located?
We would consider, there's tracking, there's
Yes.
the one that is tracking the sun, and others that are just in a fixed tilt. We would look at a tracker scenario here for Owensboro Solar Project.
Okay. Commissioner Marksberry, do you have any questions that haven't been covered that were on your list?
Thank you, Judge. How much base energy will a proposed solar farm provide? Base energy.
Yeah. So at its peak, we are able to generate the nameplate capacity. The nameplate capacity, say the 150 megawatts that we're saying this project can generate, that is the capacity that our general interconnection agreement with MISO and the transmission owner will go into a three-party agreement on the capacity that we can inject into the grid. So at its base, we're hoping that it can reach its peak at peak hours.
How would that compare to, say, nuclear?
I can't
Don't
speak on
know.
nuclear. I don't.
Okay. I have another question, please. So one of the first questions that were asked was how many times has the holding company received a claim against any bond related to a solar installation? And I believe you said you could not speak to that, but you do have an attorney here. Would you be able to speak to that? How many times has the holding company, which is, I guess, Nextera, ESI, I'm not sure which name it's under, how many times have they received a claim against any bond related to a solar installation? Yes.
It sounds like how many times have your bonds been called is what I'm processing.
Yes, the question you asked previously. I'm asking, since he could not answer, if you as their legal representative could answer the question.
If I'm understanding your question correctly,
Well, it wasn't my question, it's the one the judge read previously, but I can read it again. How many times has the holding company received a claim against any bond related to a solar installation? Please notice we're looking for claims against the bond, not whether it was paid out.
The answer is, I don't know, but let me explain.
Okay.
Because I can tell your frustration. You want a number, right? Lawsuits can be
This
filed.
day was for questions to be answered. We're just asking the questions.
I'm here to answer them the best of my ability, and I'm telling
And these
you
were
that that's not an
submitted, these were
answerable.
submitted by the public. Go ahead.
Okay. NextEra has solar facilities in, what did you say,
31 states.
Okay.
So in order to get an answer to that question, I would have to search the database in each state. I'm only licensed in Kentucky, so I can't get that information for you. I know that based on what I know from working with NextEra in Kentucky, I'm not aware of any claims in Kentucky. But then to answer your question, I would also have to search the federal databases. So I understand your frustration. It's not an answerable question by me. I can't answer it.
Okay. I'm not frustrated, by the way.
Just, can I
We
elaborate on that?
just, I
Go ahead,
believe the
Leslie.
judge had submitted these questions, what, months ago, several months ago?
6 weeks maybe.
And it's
2 months.
interesting that we're not getting answers today to most of the questions. So, and I believe, Lester, you asked for us to even cancel the first meeting, which was scheduled for maybe 3 hours, and asked for a whole day. So
It
you
was,
all
it
would
was
have
actually
plenty-
scheduled for an hour and a half,
Okay, sorry.
3 to
Sorry,
4:30.
I misspoke. So why did you ask for a whole day and
That
have us reschedule if every time that a question is asked that you had previously, that you're not going to answer it?
But the Commissioner, the reality is when Lester called and we were talking about how that was going to work, and I'm not going to say he asked for it to be canceled. I was concerned, and we're 3.5 hours in.
Right.
I was very concerned that we were going to waste their time. They're traveling from out of state to come up here for an hour and a half meeting. And Brooke and I had not spoken specifically about how much time to schedule. And so she did, she scheduled 3 to 4:30. And I was very concerned that was not adequate time. And so Lester called just to have kind of a planning conversation about how this was going to go. And the topic came up about, would you be open to switching days? And I know you were opposed to it. You let me know that other citizens were planning on being there, and I don't know if they've all shown up today or not. It's available live streaming, so they'll be able to see it after the fact. But anyway, that I would call it a mutual agreement that we canceled that, and I specifically then went to Brooke and said, I want an entire day scheduled so that however long this takes, because I didn't expect, to your point, some disappointment with the quality of answers, because you've used it on a number of them, especially before we took our short break, that I'm going to just say, till you get this farther along, you're not going to answer those questions, or you're unable to answer those questions. And that was given on a lot of these, and therefore those answers were really brief and somewhat uninformative, I'll put it that way. But the only reason I interjected myself is because I don't want Lester to take 100% of the blame for the reschedule. So anyway.
Yeah, thank you for that, Judge. And to answer your question on the methodology of the way I'm answering these questions, I opened this session today explaining that our job is to follow the state and local requirements. My effort in sitting down with the judge prior to January to go through the ordinance amendments that were passed in January, that's an extra effort on my end. My job is to say, hey, Brian, this is what I want to do. What do you need from me to do this? Brian tells me these are the permits that you need in order for you to accomplish your end goal. I, as a transactional agreement at that point where I submit what I need to get reviewed and approved with comments, with conditions, as he mentioned earlier, and I comply with those requirements. And I do the same thing at the state level with the Kentucky State Siding Board, with the Energy and Environmental Cabinet, with the MISO, with our General Interconnection Agreement. These are all conversations that we have, but at the end of the day, they're agreements that I'm complying with that were established by entity outside of NextEra Energy Resources. So for me to enter this session explaining that, hey, these questions are asking me, am I willing to do something? I'm willing to follow whatever requirement is in place for me to accomplish my end goal, which is hopefully after this session, we can sit down with the OMPC and figure out what works or not. But at the end of the day, that's outside of my control. We cannot answer things that are outside of our control. And I hope that you understand that.
Is it typical in the projects you all have done, I know you said you meet with the zoning board, or do you typically meet with like the judge executive as well?
Yes.
To go over what will work for us to do this project in this community? Is that typical?
I do. I have a relationship with all the judge executives in each county that I operate in or aspire to operate in. The reason because the OMPC has the power to enforce the law. You guys are the judicial branch that establishes what will become the law. If you decide, as you've done, to amend the law, it's only the OMPC's requirement to enforce that requirement. So that is the relationship that I love to maintain to make sure, hey, we're following these laws, but is there anything coming down the pipeline, or is there any type of disorder or disagreement that we could help clarify or clear the path? Because this is a long-term investment. This is a long-term relationship. We're not just building this and leaving. We're building this, and it takes 18 months to build. We still have requirements to comply with. We still have to report annually to the EIA, to the KYSB, to the EEC, to make sure that we are compliant throughout the whole construction phase and after construction is completed. So this is a relationship that we want to build right now for the 20, 30 years that we're proposing to be in this community.
Okay. So there's been questions that you all gonna get back with us on. Are we gonna have another meeting with them, Judge, or how would we handle that?
It depends. That would depend. I guess we can have a conversation after this meeting and see. There's a number of items, and I didn't make a list. I don't know if Brooke did. I don't know if you did.
I did.
Of things that you said you would get to us
Absolutely.
post this meeting. And I would ask that you email them to all four of us, if you would, please.
Happy to do so.
And that way we all have the very same information. And we'll see where we go from there. But
Yeah, the ask here, and I think it'll be prudent to understand our position and what we're asking for. The 1,000-foot setback that was placed, we were under the understanding that that was placed because of, you had a lot of questions when that was placed. Our ask is for us to reconsider, can we reconsider that 1,000-foot setback for everything to work on a feasible setback requirement to allow this project to happen. I hope that you guys can consider that question either here or offline.
Okay.
Thank you.
Commissioner, do you have any other questions? Okay. Commissioner Casson, anything?
No, Judge, I'm good.
Commissioner Condor?
One last comment, please. And this is for the record, please, Brooke. My comments, my questions, and my answers, I was very cautious to make sure that they were generic in nature to solar farms only. If it comes forward that a project is specific and is to be brought to OMPC and then back to us that I may have a relationship with, I will recuse myself from that specific project. That is the only right thing to do. But generically, which is what we've been doing most of the time here in this last 3.5 hours, that conversation, I believe I owed it to the people to be involved in. But if it is a project that I have a relationship with, I will recuse myself. Thank you, Judge.
Fair enough. I want to thank you, Lester, you and your team, and for taking time to meet with us. I know, and we'll get back with you as to whether or not there's going to be any movement off the 1,000 feet. The reality is, when you first came and met with me back early, I guess it was 23, and you let me know that you hoped to get a solar farm here. I don't think you had any leases at the time, but you were working on that. You were meeting with planning and zoning at that point, and I did let you know that as a guy who grew up in the rural parts of the county, that and from a standpoint fundamentally of our farmland feeds the world, helps feed the world, not just us. And there are other types. I love the idea of solar on rooftops. I told you that very definitively. Also I know some places have them on massive parking lots, and I support that, using them, and we've even had our rooftop of this building structurally checked to see if it can support solar panels. So I'm not just blabbing when I say I support it on rooftops. And if I didn't have so many shade trees at my home, I'd have them on my rooftop at home, but I like my shade trees. But it is something that, and I understand we balance that with farmers and landowners' rights, what they want to do with their property. So I don't think we're done, and we'll have a conversation with you. So I thank you for your time. I know the 1,000-foot vote was a frustration. You called me and let me know that, but I reminded you of what I had said in my initial meeting with you. So anyway, I thank you again for your time.
Thank you.
And for your team that's joined you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
With that, this meeting is adjourned.